These are 30 of the craziest new conspiracy theories shared on the Joe Rogan Experience. From quantum AI communicating with the multiverse, electric cars being hacked, and even evidence of nuclear war in ancient Egypt. These are the most mind-blowing conspiracies on JRE. This brings us to the first clip where Joe Rogan and Duncan Trussell delve into a fascinating and unsettling conspiracy theory that if a planet gets too intelligent and creates advanced technology such as AI and nukes, aliens will come down and destroy the planet or end the current civilization. This is a conversation from episode number 1953.
Imagine if we went to visit another planet. Like, let's imagine we develop space travel where it's repeatable and we could get to another planet in like 6 months.
Yeah.
A year. We get to another planet. And so we start doing these 1-year journeys out into these new galaxies. And we find a planet with a primitive version of human beings. Like a human beings of just not even primitive, just not modern era.
Yeah.
Like a few hundred years ago.
Yeah.
Just a few hundred years ago. And then we come back a year later and they're overrun with machines and there's just a small pocket of humans left.
Yeah.
They're just overrun with something that they created.
Yeah.
That just took over and took off, and then we realized, like, oh my God, this can happen everywhere.
Right.
And that's kind of a life form. We just don't think it's a life form because it doesn't have blood and cells. But
Okay, let me
it's
add
a
to it.
technological life form.
Then you come back another year. Now the planet is just a metallic ball that starts attacking you with
It's a Death
weapons
Star.
that you can't evade. So you barely escape. You get back to your planet, and because you have some kind of non-AI technology, you're like, we have got to wipe out every civilization that is even close to achieving this, because if they do, it's the Borg. So you do the scan.
Yeah, the
and
Borg.
what pops up on your futuristic display? Oh shit, there's this one. It's a third planet from that star there. They're just on the precipice of creating this thing. So let's go ahead and send our Tic Tacs over there, make sure it's happening. We don't want to destroy a planet if we don't have to. Oh yeah, it's happening. Get rid of that one. And then that explains the Fermi paradox, is because anytime a planet is on the precipice of inventing machine intelligence, an invisible cosmic order that has already figured out that that's cancer wipes them out.
Joe draws a parallel between Duncan's analogy and UFO folklore, which suggests that aliens began appearing when humans started using nuclear weapons. He references notable incidents such as the Maelstrom Air Force Base event in 1967 in Montana, the Minot Air Force Base incident in 1968 in North Dakota, and the Los Alamos National Laboratory sightings in the 1940s in New Mexico. In all these cases, witnesses reported UFO sightings. Joe highlights the Maelstrom Air Force Base incident, where 10 nuclear missiles were mysteriously deactivated during the UFO sightings. And to this day, there is no clear explanation for how or why it happened.
Just
Or stops it from happening and allows them to smoothly transition to the next stage of existence, which they're already aware of because their civilization's already gone through it. That's the UFO folklore when it comes to the bombs, right? That they started showing up and that they disarmed nuclear missile sites. You know about that, right? There's reports from, these head military guys that were on these missile sites where all their power shut down, everything shut down. There's this thing hovering over their military base that showed complete control out of all their power systems.
Yeah, shut it down. Well,
And then took off. Like, if I came from another planet and I wanted to let people know, hey, settle the down.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. I would shut their missiles down, hover over their base for a little bit, and go, okay, any questions?
Right.
Don't nuke the planet, you dipshits.
Or you might be that nice planet. It's like, go and try to it's a garden planet. These poor humans. Or you might be the Varnasians who are like, yeah, we tried that. It didn't work. And we're just going to do a pole shift. We're going to actually make it to on average, it takes about 11,000 years for that planet to get to the point where the dumb monkey descendants decide to make another machine intelligence, start doing nuclear bombs, which because of quantum entanglement cause disruptions in other planets that kill people. And also, oh great, they were going to do the particle accelerator. So you just build into that planet. Let's just make it to 11,000 years or so. There's a pole shift that wipes out most life on the planet and it just starts over. Maybe eventually we'll get a good batch.
Up next, Joe Rogan and John Reeves explore the mysteries of the universe, including black holes, the existence of aliens, and the possibility of interdimensional life. They also delve into the intriguing theory that the structure of the universe might be connected to the human brain, drawing parallels between cosmic patterns and neural networks. This is a conversation from episode number 2080.
First of all, in the center of every galaxy is a supermassive black hole that I think it's, what is it, 0.5% of the mass of the entire galaxy? It's in the something along those lines. It's at so the larger the galaxy, the larger the supermassive black hole. And there's real speculation that if you went through that black hole, you reach another universe with also hundreds of billions of galaxies, each with hundreds of billions of stars. Each one of those galaxies has a supermassive black hole. You go through that, another universe. Hundreds of billions of galaxies, hundreds of billions of black holes. You go through them, hundreds of billions of galaxies, new universes everywhere. And then there's dimension. This is the real speculation when people start talking about UAPs and alien life, and there's two thoughts. One thought, well, there's more than two thoughts. One thought is that they are us from the future. Another thought is they are us from their people, their things, their intelligent life forms, maybe even artificial intelligence, something that has been created from other galaxies that is physically transported here. And then the other thought is there's interdimensional travel, that there are beings from somewhere that are capable of visiting this dimension that we exist in, but they exist in something, so they are here all the time. They're just here in a way that we have no ability to access them, but they can access us.
Joe reflects on the vastness of the universe, suggesting that our understanding of it is so small it might be comparable to less than a grain of sand or even a subatomic particle. He draws parallels between the structure of the known universe and neurons in the human brain, speculating that our universe could be a single atom within a much larger organism, one that exists inside another infinitely expansive universe. This concept hints at a potentially infinite and interconnected cosmic structure.
Yeah, which is weird that the universe is so big we can't even wrap our head around it, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is not even a good way to describe it. It's a grain of sand. Yep. Maybe it's not even a grain of sand. Maybe it's an atom. Maybe it's not even an atom. Maybe it's a subatomic particle. And maybe the whole thing is fractal. So maybe what we are and what this planet is. I mean, I'm sure you've seen when they look at, have you ever seen a map of the known universe in comparison to a neuron in the human brain? Mm-mm. See if you can find that. It's entirely possible that it's just constantly, if you constantly expand further and further out, that this entire universe is an atom. It's a part of a much larger organism that exists in another universe that is infinitely large, that is impossible for us to grasp our head around.
To wrap up the conversation, Joe reflects on the striking visual similarities between neural networks in the human brain and the cosmic web of galaxies, wondering if they are fundamentally connected. Take a look at this image showing the resemblance between human brain cells and the structure of galaxies. Rogan speculates that the universe itself could be a single brain cell within an infinitely large being, potentially part of a civilization existing in another universe.
So that's a brain cell, and that's galaxies. And when you look at that, I mean, goddamn, those things look the same. They look the same. Neural network and the cosmic web, they look the same. And if they are the same, if that is what a brain cell is, and that the entire universe is a part of the brain of an infinitely large individual that's a part of a civilization that also exists in another universe, that's a part of an infinitely large being, that's a brain cell of that universe is a brain cell of that thing, and then it just keeps going and going and going and going. And even the idea of the Big Bang is just like, maybe not. Maybe it's always been here. Maybe it's just constant. And maybe it's God. Maybe the whole thing.
Maybe those people, aliens, whatever you want to call it, visited Earth about 65, 75 million years ago, and they said, hey, no life like us can live here with these dinosaurs running around.
Yeah.
Let's burn this sun.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Billy Carson delve into the evidence suggesting a nuclear war in ancient Egypt. They discuss the unscathed skeletons still lying in the streets to this day. They also explore possible reasons behind the conflict. This is a conversation from episode number 2160.
You can capture that energy and you can transfer it into a device for gold electroplating, for any other electrical tools you need, like some of the tools they had to have used to create some of these incredible works of art. We can see the tool marks, so we know they had the tools. But they had wireless electricity way back then.
That's insane. If that's true, that's insane. Because you would think there would be some kind of physical evidence of a device, like something left over, some sort of a, ancient chainsaw, like something.
Yeah, they did a great job cleaning up. I mean, they poured sand over Giza to bury another couple hundred pyramids there at Giza.
Do you think they poured sand? Do you think that's just natural erosion over time? Because when the pyramids existed, it was a very different place, right? Like if you go back before the pyramids, like 9,000 years ago, it was a lush rainforest, right?
Yeah.
And then over time, it became sand. And the same with the entire Sahara Desert, which is really crazy. We're talking about the other day, they find whale bones.
Yeah.
Joe asks Carson if he knows why the pyramids were covered up. In response, Carson recounts a war that occurred thousands of years ago in Mohenjo-Daro, which he claims shows evidence of a nuclear conflict. Carson explains that in the aftermath of the war, the intense heat caused the sand to turn to glass. Remarkably, skeletons are still found lying in the streets to this day, preserved for thousands of years, adding to the mystery of what might have happened.
But so the point being that this place has changed radically, like absolutely radically over time.
Yeah.
So who knows do you know why those things were covered up? Is it possible that it was just sand over time?
Well, if you look at the tablets again, they talk about this war, right? And this war that occurred, there's a lot of wars, obviously, but this one particular war, it seems like the same one that damaged the area or the region of the Giza Plateau, also Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley up there by Pakistan. And the reason why it's interesting is if you look at the war in the text and then go to those areas, it looks now almost you can begin to see, oh, wait a minute, it looks like war. Mohenjo-Daro, Indus Valley, the buildings turned to glass. The sand turned to glass, and the bodies are still laying in the street right now today, holding hands, never been scavenged by animals. So
wait a minute, where is this?
Mohenjo-Daro.
Are there photos that we can look at?
Oh, yeah, look it up. Mohenjo-Daro, Indus Valley, dead bodies still laying in the street thousands of years later. And
they just lay there? No one's covered them up?
Nobody's covered them up. Yeah, when you put a Geiger counter over them, higher than background level radiation. Okay?
Really?
Yeah.
Take a look at some images of the skeletons laying in the streets of Mohenjo-Daro. The skeletons at Mohenjo-Daro were uncovered during archaeological excavations conducted between 1922 and 1931. Reports indicating that the bodies were neither buried nor scavenged by animals have sparked widespread speculation about the mysterious circumstances surrounding their deaths. Additionally, archaeologists discovered a layer of vitrified materials in parts of the site, believed to have been caused by extreme heat. This unusual phenomenon has fueled theories of a significant high-energy event in the ancient city. Some theorists propose that the vitrified material and reported high radiation levels at the site may be evidence of a nuclear explosion or similar advanced technology. These findings continue to intrigue researchers and spark debate about the city's enigmatic past.
And that building, those stones are vitrified, which means 3,000 plus degree temperature.
Oh, shit.
What could have caused that level of temperature, energetic release?
Well, it could have been a low atmosphere asteroid.
It could have been.
I mean, just like
that's possible.
Tunguska.
Yeah, it could have been a lot, but then their bones would have been splattered apart and broken into pieces.
Good call. Yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, because they don't seem to be broken apart.
No, they're not broken apart.
Right.
That impact would have shattered the bones and spread them out over a great distance.
But without impact, even if you just look at the one that burst in the atmosphere in Tunguska, it just flattened trees.
Flattened everything, all the trees.
I think it's some insane, like 1 million acres or something crazy.
Yeah, it's incredible. So
how big was the Tunguska explosion? That one's, so those bodies would be toast. Because the trees were ripped apart.
The buildings would have been flattened.
The legs would have flown off.
Right.
There's no way they would just be laying there like that.
Exactly.
That's interesting. And they don't seem to be like chopped up.
No.
Did they have any evidence of stab wounds or anything on them?
They don't have any evidence of any injury, of any kind of attack or any cutting or like swords or anything.
They just all got cooked.
Right. And then in the tablets it says that the evil wind moved over the land after they released these weapons. And then Enki goes to his father. Enki goes to his father Anu and says, hey, can you stop the evil wind? Because he had fallen in love with some people, and down there. And he's like, there's nothing I can do. He said, get in your skyship and forebode. That means get the hell out of here. And he said the people's hair was falling out. Their eyes were bleeding. Their nose were bleeding. Their fingernails were curling off. That sounds like radiation sickness.
So you think it's radiation sickness that did this to all these people, or was it an impact that did this to all these people?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
For context, Enki, also known as Ea in Akkadian mythology, is one of the most important and revered deities in ancient Mesopotamian mythology. Enki is the god of wisdom, water, creation, magic, and fertility, and he plays a central role in numerous Sumerian and Akkadian myths. Joe asked Carson how conventional archaeologists explain the events at Mohenjo-Daro. Carson responds by describing other ancient wars and weapons of mass destruction that he claims existed in those times. He claims to be powerful enough to destroy any man on 3 worlds.
And they just don't know what it is? So how does a conventional archaeologist describe it? Do they just say it's a massacre?
They just call it a mythical massacre, and they stay away from it. When you look in the other texts, the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, you find out about these wars also. They're recorded. They have weapons called the Brahma-astra and the Brahma-handa weapon, and these weapons, what they describe them as doing, duplicate what you saw there.
How do they describe them?
They describe them as weapons that once released can't be revolted or can't be turned back, and that they will obliterate any area, any city. And they say that one of the weapons can destroy any man on 3 worlds. It's crazy stuff. And this is where Oppenheimer got his famous quote when he obviously tested the nuke, right? Now I have become death, destroyer of worlds. He got that from the Mahabharata.
Yeah. What a great quote to say after you detonate the first nuclear bomb.
Oh, man, crazy.
What a great quote.
The conversation shifts to the idea of ancient beings, often referred to as gods in religious and historical texts, engaging in wars on Earth. Carson argues that these beings were not singular deities, as traditionally interpreted, but rather multiple gods or advanced entities. He further suggests that unexplained disasters such as the destruction of Mohenjo-Daro may have been the result of these gods warring among themselves over resources, populations, and control of the planet.
Yeah.
So the idea is that there were beings that were having wars on this planet. Mm-hmm. Were they? Do you believe they were having wars with people that were revolting, or were they having wars with other beings?
They were fighting with each other, and evidence of these wars can be found in the book of Deuteronomy in the modern day Bible. These gods, and I do mean gods with an S, because everywhere in the Bible where it says God singular, it's actually a mistranslation. The actual, if you backwards look up the translation in Arabic and then down to Aramaic and everything else, you find out it's gods, plural. They were fighting each other over resources and people and control of the planet. And so that's why in the book of Deuteronomy, God tells people, go to this city, and it's like a far city away. They don't even know these people exist. They go over there to kill them. He says, kill the women, kill the children, and bring the spoils of war back to me. And you see these wars in the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Sumerian tablets. And these wars are just nonstop, the Indian Vedas. And it's always about attacking another city, and even talk about Trojan horse methods to get behind the gates and then to utilize that to attack and kill and bring back these spoils, which is pretty crazy stuff. It's like they were attacking each other. They had gone around.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Michael Malice discuss the possibility of humanity facing extinction due to an impending super-volcanic eruption. Joe emphasizes that both humans and our current technology are unprepared for the catastrophic destruction such an event would cause. He also provides a timeline for when this super eruption could occur, and if he's right, it's much closer than you'd expect. This is a conversation from episode number 1952.
The reality of human life is that we're subject to a host of uncontrollable natural disasters that are imminent.
Yes.
They're going to happen.
Yes.
Yellowstone's going to blow. We're going to get hit by an asteroid, and we might nuke ourselves too.
Sure.
Like, all that stuff is real too. So that's all on the table. And also, I've talked to enough people that are they're really educated in the history of ancient cultures and ancient civilizations, and the evidence of natural disasters wiping people out and people having to start from scratch. It seems like we're a part of like this giant never-ending cycle of getting knocked back into the Stone Age and then rebuilding to a new version of complex society. I think we're on a version of that now, but I think there's been many versions of that. Yeah. And I think that that's also on the table for us.
But I think it'd be a lot easier for us to bounce back than someone 2,000 years ago with our technology and our ability to... No?
No. No, not at all. Not at all. Because when it hits, first of all, very few people survive and everything goes to shit. There's no electricity, no generators work, there's no one pumping oil, no one knows how to make a generator, no one knows how to make a cell phone, so all that technology is lost.
Well, the Jim Baker people do. Wait, so what would this be? Like a meteor? Other than a meteor hitting the Earth, what would cause this?
Super-volcano would kill almost all of us.
Joe cites the Yellowstone volcano eruption as an example of a natural disaster with the potential to wipe out humanity. And to be honest, he makes a solid point. Around 640,000 years ago, one of Yellowstone's last major eruption, the Lava Creek eruption, unleashed absolute chaos. The super eruption ejected a staggering 1,000 cubic kilometers of material, with ash spreading across North America and traveling as far as the Gulf of Mexico, about 2,400 kilometers from the epicenter. Thankfully, the eruption predates modern humans, so there were no direct casualties. Imagine the sheer devastation if such an event were to occur today. We'd be facing millions of deaths and total chaos around the world.
The Yellowstone supervolcano, it's a caldera volcano. Like they didn't realize that it was so big until somewhere in like the 2000s, I think it was. They did satellite imagery and they realized, oh my God, that's the caldera of a volcano. Like this Yellowstone thing. We thought it was just this crazy place with hot springs. Like no, that's a supervolcano that is a continent killer, and it blows every 600,000 to 800,000 years, and everyone dies. Like the whole country dies, and it happens every 600,000 to 800,000 years. And the last time it happened was like 600,000 years.
See, that's
ago.
Another reason Texas should be its own country.
Well, we'll get hit. We'll get hit. We're all gonna die if that happens.
Joe points out that this phenomenon occurs roughly every 600,000 to 800,000 years, and when you do the math, the theory becomes frighteningly accurate. Yellowstone has erupted 3 times in recorded history, and each one was a massive event. First, the Huckleberry Ridge eruption, a monstrous event which occurred 2.1 million years ago. Next came the Mesa Falls eruption, 1.3 million years ago. And finally, the Lava Creek eruption hit 640,000 years ago. Each one reshaped the planet. The Mesa Falls eruption occurred 800,000 years after the first eruption, Huckleberry Ridge. Then, Lava Creek erupted 660,000 years after. Now it's been 640,000 years since the last eruption, putting us dangerously close to the pattern's next predicted time frame. Joe fears we could be on the brink of another catastrophic eruption. He also references other significant volcanic events, such as the Toba super eruption that occurred 70,000 years ago in Indonesia.
You know, it's happened before. Was it the Toba? Was that what it was? Yeah, in Indonesia? There was a Toba volcano in Indonesia 70,000 years ago. They think knocked the human race down to a few thousand people.
Holy shit, really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. These things happen, man, and they happen with regularity. In terms of if you look at the timeline of the Earth, they happen all the time. It's just when. Is it going to happen now, or is it going to happen 1,000 years from now when we have enough technology to mitigate its effects in some way? But when it happens, you get nuclear winter. Everything dies. No crops. Nothing. The sun doesn't get through. The skies are filled with ash.
Michael challenges Joe's pessimistic outlook on the future. In response, Joe argues that his concern stems from the lack of attention people give to these issues. He cites the volcanic eruption in Pompeii as an example of people underestimating obvious dangers, ultimately leaving them unprepared when the disaster struck.
You can't really live your life with concerned about something like that happening.
I'm not living my life with concern. I'm saying that's also on the table.
Sure.
So that's why I'm gray.
Okay.
Get it? Because I'm like, yeah, hopefully it's going to be great, but maybe not. And for all of us, the end is going to suck.
I'm glad to hear you're more concerned, as I am, if I had to choose between natural disaster or we're all going to end up killing each other.
I'm concerned with both, but I'm always concerned with things that people are dismissive of or that they don't think of as a threat, because that's when they hit you. When something people lived in Pompeii, they're like, that volcano, don't worry about it, we're good.
Until you have to worry about it.
Until they just didn't understand. Like you're in a terrible spot to put a city. Like if that thing goes, and it goes all the time, it just doesn't go within your lifetime, so you don't understand. Like you're dealing with an ant's timeline. An ant to us, an ant lives a few days.
Right.
They're gone. We live 100 years if we're lucky. Volcanoes are hundreds of thousands of years of activity, and they go on these long cycles. Some of them, these super volcanoes, and they just blow, and you never know when it's going to happen. And they create islands in the middle of the ocean. That's what Hawaii is.
Yeah.
It's a volcano that's sprung out of the ocean. And now you go vacation there and put suntan lotion on, sit out there and have margaritas. You're on a volcano.
Joe expresses concern that humanity is focusing on the wrong priorities. While climate change gets significant attention, he believes we should also focus on threats like volcanic eruptions and asteroids, catastrophes for which, even with our modern technology, we have no solutions or means of prevention.
And that's our life. That's the reality of living on Earth. This is not stable. That's why all these nutty people that are talking about climate change is going to kill us and it's going to kill us. It's not good. It's not good that we're polluting. It's not good that we're having a net negative effect on the atmosphere. But also, there's so many other things to be concerned with. We have zero solution to supervolcanoes. We have zero solution to asteroid impacts. We have zero solution to things that have wiped out. We know they killed off the dinosaurs.
Right.
We know that. We know it. We're for 100%. They find the crater in the Yucatan. They find craters all over the place. They found a big one in Greenland or
Isn't
in
there
Iceland.
one in Siberia or somewhere?
Oh, yeah, the Tunguska one.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
That's the one that they think happened during the time where Earth passes through this meteor shower. There was a comet shower. How do they refer to it? But I think it's every every November and every June. We pass through this thing. And most of the time, it just gives you meteor showers in the sky. You see, people get excited about that. You can kind of predict when that happens. Well, that's why they know that it's going to happen, because it happens during these times we go through this meteor shower. They think that is what happened in Tunguska in the early 1900s, because it happened during that timeline. So whatever this thing was, it didn't even make impact with the ground. It detonated in the sky, and it killed like a million acres or some crazy shit of trees.
For context, the Tunguska event took place on June 30th, 1908, near the Podkamenia Tunguska River in Siberia, Russia. A massive explosion, equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT, destroyed over 2,000 square kilometers of forest, topping an estimated 80 million trees. Take a look at this image of the explosion site. 100 years later, no trees have grown back in the affected areas. Insane, right? The Tunguska event still holds the record as the largest atmospheric explosion in modern history.
12 megaton explosion. Jeez Louise.
Holy shit, look at that picture.
And to this day, there's no trees there.
Seriously?
Yes, to this day.
Why?
Because it's nuked. I don't know, man.
Is it radioactive? Like literally?
It just blew it out, man. I don't know. It just blew out whatever it did to that area. That soil sucks.
Holy crap.
Isn't that crazy?
1908, that wasn't that long ago.
Up next, on a lighter note, Joe Rogan and Sam Morrill dive into the idea of a future where our thoughts are constantly monitored by law enforcement agencies. Imagine a world where every thought is scanned through a database, and you can be arrested for simply thinking the wrong thing. Joe and Sam explore how brain implants and chips could give governments this level of control over us. This is a conversation from episode number 2103.
Imagine if you could get arrested for your thoughts. Like, because I think some things that I would never do.
You got to erase your browser mind thoughts too.
Yeah,
like erase your history.
Could you imagine if you had an impulse to just smash someone in the face, but you were resisting it? You weren't going to do it.
Are you a good person if you're resisting it constantly?
It depends on who you're talking to.
Yeah.
If you're the asshole all the time, if you're constantly getting in fights with people, it might be you. But
we all know that person who's like this. I'm like, everyone's an asshole in your stories.
But there's also times when some people need to be smacked, and there's in those moments, like, imagine if you could get arrested because you tested positive for a potential aggressive episode. Right?
It's like a COVID test. Like you get 2 lines.
You're keeping your shit together, but you're imagining just teeing off on this guy, just smashing this
He
dude.
could be a danger.
Yeah, like, hey, man, stop doing it. But if you have that thought, I'm about to smash that guy. A light goes off, the cops come in, and they arrest you. And they arrest you because you had a potentially violent episode. You hit red line.
You're red flag.
Sam, this is a serious thing. You went to red line. But I didn't do anything. But you might have.
Yeah.
Or they'll tell you were going to. We know. We have predictive technology.
As the discussion on government control deepens, Joe and Sam segue into the topic of brain implants and chips. They explore the unsettling idea that a future could soon arrive where we're required to implant chips in our brains to perform basic tasks like transactions to function in society. The thought of how much control governments could wield once everyone adopts these chips is chilling, and it's no longer a question of if, but when, as Elon Musk's Neuralink has already entered the human testing stage.
back.
Well, think about how much of our freedom we're constantly giving away.
Yeah.
When I fly, I don't want to wait in a long line. So I give them, my iris, my fingerprint, all that stuff. Now those lines are longer than the other lines, right? So I'm
Are
like,
they?
oh, yeah. If I go to LaGuardia, and pre-check and clear are the longest lines now.
No shit.
Yeah. So
sometimes you just get and you go through the other one?
I take my shoes off again. I'm going backward.
Wow.
But then there's going to probably be a new line. You got to give more. You dip your balls in the thing. You got to give them the outline of your penis. I gave you my penis. You got to let me cut.
Well, you have to have the update and the chip. Do you have your update? You can fly if you have your update.
Did you update your
brain?
dick?
Did you update
We only
your
have
brain?
your flaccid penis. We need a hard penis.
If you have the brain chip, we'll let you pass through. You don't ever have to worry about identification ever again.
I thought of a new wrinkle for that. They can let you update right there at the airport with some janky terminal that's probably hacked. Or you could do it at home like everybody else will probably be doing it. When you update.
Yep.
Update from a safe place.
Update from a
But
safe
you forgot,
place.
or you have to do it here. Like it's like a subway terminal.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll get to the point where you'll just have an account in your head and you won't have to pay for anything with a credit card ever again. It'll all be an account in your head, but only through central bank digital currency. If you subscribe to central bank digital currency, we can iron out all the inequality and all of the problems of society today.
They'll get us.
Joe takes a logical approach to implant technology. On one hand, he acknowledges its potential benefits for people with paralysis or certain disabilities, offering life-changing solutions. However, he raises concerns about what happens when healthy individuals start using it. What if the government steps in, makes it mandatory, and refuses to let you remove it, all under the guise of serving the greater good? The implications of such control is scary when you think of it.
If you're a paralyzed person, it's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's way better to be able to do that than not.
That's true.
But once we start doing it too,
Yeah.
Sam, I know you're not paralyzed, but let me tell you the benefits of linking up. And you just start talking to your
It's
girlfriend.
going to be like Jehovah's Witnesses. They're going to be
thinking
banging on
about
your
linking
door.
up. I mean, my cousin linked up. He's never felt better. He signed a 1-year lease. You link up for 1 year. You can't disconnect or they kill you.
It'll be like Ozempic. You give the linked up people like a year to see how they do, and then you're like, I might link up.
No, it'd be like military service. Like you have to, if you're going to link up, you have to link up. You have to commit to 1 year because you're contributing to the grid.
Yeah.
You're contributing to the grid of ideas if you link up. So you have to keep it on for 1 year. And most people don't take it off. And if you do take it off, the parts where they screw it in get infected.
Yeah, you're going to have to get a re-up.
You look weird. You're like one of those weird people that just disconnected. We're so close to something like that.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Jonathan Ward discuss the theory that corporations and industry leaders actively suppress individuals who develop innovative ideas that could disrupt or revolutionize their industries. This is a conversation from episode number 1443.
Same with like toroidal engines. There was a great engineer up in Lodi that was revisiting toroidals, and he had a Ford Focus that would do is like his daughter's old car with a blown up motor. He had his own toroidal motor that he had developed that could run from the energy in the charged particles in the air.
What?
This thing did like 15 miles an hour on a flat test track, running on air.
Charged particles in the air.
Yes.
So
Ionically charged
conceivably,
particles
as
in
the
the air.
technology improved, that 15 miles an hour could be a real speed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then that same guy, I saw him once at a trade show, and I was exhibiting at the show as well. So I was there on setup day. I was bored out of my gourd. I was already set up in the Ford booth. So I'm just walking around, sort of sniffing around, and see this trippy scientist guy in his lab coat in this shitty little booth. It was like, 6 by 10 foot booth. And, at a show where people have like 200 by 60 foot booths. And he's got this odd little toroidal thing and then a bigger toroidal thing and literally like a chalkboard. So I'm like, dude, what's going on? So I started talking to him about it. He starts explaining the technology and what he was doing. And like the smaller one had 300 foot-pounds of torque. The larger one had 2,000. And he was looking to develop it for rail cars, for semis, for cars, like, and on and on and on. He's like, yeah, the biggest problem is stopping it once it gets going. Because the toroidal structure meant that the compression cycle from, 12 to 2 of that first cylinder was such that when the combustion occurred and it propelled the next piston into the next combustion cycle and kept going. So getting that power out of a central crank was a challenge, and then how to stop the damn thing was like the bigger challenge. But they'd run on like horse piss, ionic charged particles, diesel, gas. Like, they didn't even need spark plugs. So I'm like blown away by this. I go back the next day. Poof. Where'd he go? Booth's gone, empty, done. And I had the guy's info and I tried to reach out to him. Website gone. A website I'd looked at the night before, gone. Got gobbled up. 5 years later, I see him again at another trade show with another kick-ass design. And man, was he a bitter man. He's like, yeah, never again. Because they bought it and they shelved it. I'm never selling anything again.
Joe asks Jonathan what he thinks might have actually happened, and Jonathan suggests that the product was likely purchased with the sole intent of shelving it. He also adds that he is not entirely sure who is behind it, and this situation is not isolated. Over the years, there have been numerous cases where groundbreaking projects were buried, or even worse, their inventors disappeared under suspicious circumstances.
So what do you think happened if you're a conspiracy theorist? Do you think someone bought him out and just
I'm a small independent business owner realist in that, hell yes, someone didn't like that and they shelved that shit.
So they bought it and then just shelved it?
Yep.
Wow.
So his next product...
Who did that?
I don't know. And he was very cagey about it.
Joe tells the story of Stanley Meyer, who in 1998 claimed to have invented a car that ran on water. The process involved splitting water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen with minimal energy. However, later that year, Meyer died suddenly after a meeting with investors, and his very last words were, "They killed me, they killed me."
Do you remember there was a video that was circulating many years ago about a guy who created a car to run on air? Water. He created a car that runs on water. And then this car that ran on water, I mean, he apparently had a viable engine and it was really working. And then he had a heart attack. And as he was dying, he was saying, "They killed me. They killed me." And then he died. And then nobody heard from the water engine again. But
he's from Columbus.
He's from Columbus too?
Grove City, yeah.
See, that shit happens, and I don't even like the term conspiracy theory because I think that's something created by the machine to negate things that are disruptive and innovative, so we can put them in a little box and call it a conspiracy theory or whatever, and therefore it never happened.
Well, anyone who doesn't believe in conspiracy theories, I say, look at Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
It's real clear. Totally. Meyer said that his invention could do what physicists say is impossible, turn water into hydrogen fuel efficiently enough to drive his dune buggy cross-country on 20 gallons straight from the tap. Wow. He took a sip of cranberry juice, then he grabbed his neck, bolted out the door, dropped to his knees, and vomited violently. I ran outside and asked him what's wrong. His brother Stephen Meyer recalled, he said, "They poisoned me." That was his dying declaration.
That's fucked up.
That's fucked up.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Graham Hancock delve into Hancock's theory that the mysterious iconography, the man between two felines, found in multiple places across the Middle East, is unlikely to be a coincidence. They discuss the potential connections between these carvings and their deeper significance, exploring what they might reveal about ancient cultures, shared beliefs, and possibly even lost civilizations. This is a conversation from episode number 2215.
I can't help feeling that's precisely what Göbekli Tepe is. It's a time capsule. It's a memorial to a lost time. And I think that what we're looking at in that whole area is the outcome of contact with an earlier, largely lost civilization. I think it passed on its cultural genes right there in that area of Turkey and down into the Jordan Valley and Cyprus. And not only there, also the Indus Valley civilization. It's incredible iconography which shows a man between two felines. It's a very striking image. You see a man and two tigers or leopards on either side of him, and he may be holding them apart, he may be gripping them in some way.
What is this so Jamie can find it?
You can find it on the Gebel al-Arak knife handle from Egypt. You can find it from Sayburk, Sayburk, in Turkey, the man between two felines, and you can find it in the Indus Valley civilization right across in Pakistan on these steatite seals that they used to make, where again you see that same icon of the man between two felines. And it suggests that cultural ideas way back in the remote past were being spread around the world very, very rapidly.
For context, Göbekli Tepe, located in southern Turkey, is home to some of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries of modern times. Dating back to approximately 9,600 BCE, it is widely considered the oldest known temple complex in the world. Take a look at these identical images of the iconography known as the man between two felines from various parts of the world, as described by Hancock. This carving, prominently found at Göbekli Tepe, remains one of its most intriguing features, sparking debates and speculations among archaeologists and historians about its symbolism and purpose. As the conversation progresses, the two shift to analysing each iconography, and Joe questions what each image might represent.
So that particular image, is there any sort of a theory as to what they were trying, what that represented?
Human mastery of animals is the only one I've heard that's being suggested.
But it seems like they're trying to get him.
Well, it does in that case, rather than or that he's holding them.
Right.
He's holding them at bay,
keeping them from getting each other.
Yeah, and then if you go down to the Egyptian one, which is the Gebel el-Arak knife handle, there it is. That's from ancient Egypt, pre-dynastic Egypt, same thing.
Wow.
And then the next one is from Tiwanaku in Bolivia. That's a redrawing from Tiwanaku in Bolivia. And again, it's a man between two felines.
Wow.
So when I see this kind of complicated image turning up all around the world, I can't help feeling that there's a remote common source, which is sharing. It's not each culture representing or influencing the other. It's a remote common source that they all share. So what I'm saying is we're seeing a sudden emergence of something that is being recognized as a civilization in Turkey just immediately after Göbekli Tepe, around the time of Göbekli Tepe. And we're seeing it in the Jordan Valley, and we're seeing it in the Indus Valley, and we're seeing it in South America as well. The same iconography keeps on repeating, and I don't think it's a coincidence.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Julian Lennon dive into a fascinating discussion about Google's Willow quantum computer. This groundbreaking machine is said to communicate with computers in parallel universes to solve complex equations. If true, it represents a monumental leap in technology, connecting us to realities beyond our own. This is a conversation from episode number 2243.
Well, one of the things that I've talked to about with some pretty insanely brilliant people is quantum computing.
Oh, yes.
And this new Google quantum computer that can do it, essentially the way a quantum computer works, a problem that would take thousands of years for every computer on Earth to solve.
I've read that.
It can solve in a second.
Yeah.
Something that can take more years than you literally can understand. It could be solved in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I read that.
It's insane. And this is where it gets really weird. The way it was explained to me, and we should have to Google how quantum computers work and why people connect them to the multiverse so I don't f this up. But the idea is that they're pulling answers from different universes simultaneously. They don't even completely understand how this is working. But the amount of power in computing is incomprehensible.
Yeah.
Like you're only looking at it and there's numbers, you could write all those numbers out, but your brain's not capable of grasping really what's going on. Yeah. And it's probably the biggest breakthrough technologically in human history by a long stretch. And it's all happening without most people even being aware of what the implications are.
Take a look at an image of Google's quantum computer. It's unlike anything you've seen before. For context, quantum computers are like regular computers, but much more advanced. Instead of using bits, which are either 0 or 1, they use qubits. But here's the interesting part. Qubits can be both 0 and 1 at the same time due to a concept called superposition. They also rely on entanglement, a strange phenomenon that lets qubits share information instantly, no matter the distance. This means quantum computers can perform multiple calculations simultaneously, making them incredibly fast for solving complex problems, like cracking codes, optimizing systems, or simulating molecules. However, they're extremely sensitive and require ultra-cold temperatures and precise setups to function properly, so it's not going to be available to the general public anytime soon. To get a better understanding of the quantum computer, Joe reads an article where the founder of the quantum AI explains how the machine works.
Google's quantum AI founder said the performance gains lends credence to the idea that we live in a multiverse. The idea is that Willow might be communicating with parallel universes to finish calculations faster. Like, what What does that mean? The announcement led Google's already high stock price to surge, which isn't that shocking, but perhaps most surprising for us laypeople that Google's quantum AI founder and lead, Harmut Nevin, said that the chip's performance lends credence to the notion that quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes, in line with the idea that we live in a multiverse. And then it says, excuse me? This obviously has caused a bit of a stir and it isn't exactly clear on how he made that leap. It sounds a bit like something out of a sci-fi movie, and I'm definitely not going to pretend I'm an expert, but it's worth pointing out that Google is very much still in the theoretical research phase of this journey. This is very weird stuff. An evolving scientific field that even people working on it don't fully understand.
Joe reads a segment of the article explaining how Google's quantum chip solved a problem that would have taken the world's most advanced classical supercomputer 10 septillion years to solve in just 5 minutes. There's no denying it. This is probably the most advanced technology humanity has ever developed.
So AI's founder and lead, Hartmut Nevin, said that the new chip had performed a purposefully complicated exercise called a random circuit sampling benchmark in 5 minutes. One of the world's most advanced classical supercomputers, on the other hand, it would take 10 and then 3 zeros, 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 years to perform the same exercise. That's 10 septillion years, which exceeds known time scales in physics and vastly exceeds the age of the universe. So it can do more time than vastly exceeds the entire age of the universe, and it can do it in 5 minutes. And the reason it could achieve such a monumental improvement in calculating capacity is because Willow is made up of 105 qubits and can track the potential of each of those at once, allowing it to record potential data much faster and come to the right answer sooner. So, like, what is happening?
To end this segment, Joe gives a final breakdown of how the Willow quantum computer achieves such incredible speed and effectiveness, and the explanation will blow your mind. Until now, the multiverse has only been a theoretical concept or a theme in movies, but this groundbreaking quantum computer might be humanity's first step towards interacting with other universes.
In simpler language, Willow is doing one calculation while an unknown number of Willows in other universes parallel to our own are doing their own calculations, and they are sharing that data to avoid needing to individually do every possible calculation to finish the equation. What the f does that mean? How are they sharing data between universes? I don't know. Ask Nevin. Remember, this is all theoretical and doesn't prove anything, but Nevin is saying that the fact that the chip can outperform our best supercomputers by such a wide margin means that it might have broken Newton's theory of physics. Yo.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Tim Dillon discuss how America seems to be on the brink of destruction, with few people showing concern about the country's direction. Instead, everyone, including Tim himself, appears to be prioritizing their own interests. They explore how this self-serving mindset could ultimately lead to the rise of totalitarianism. This segment is both humorous and unsettling, highlighting the potential long-term consequences for the nation. This is a conversation from episode number 1860.
When I was a kid, I remember reading about like the fall of the Roman Empire and the fall of the Greek Empire. And then I was thinking about America.
Yeah.
And I was like, is this thing going to go away someday?
Right.
Is that possible? Is it possible that this is just one? I mean, we want to think it's fucking permanent, but I bet the people of Rome felt the same way.
Of course they did.
This is how it is. This is how I live every day. This is not going to change.
Right.
And Russians know.
They know.
They know.
Their
know
society's collapsed.
They've been through it.
Our society will go down. Nothing will ever be funnier. America will come apart in one of the funniest ways. All of these people, these grifters, everybody circling the wagons, the Caitlyn Jenners, the Donald Trumps. It'll be funny till you'll die laughing. Literally, you'll die, but you will be laughing. It will be the most absurd and insane thing. It will be out of a fucking dystopian horror movie, and it won't be funnier than America, because we're a crazy country full of crazy people, and everybody's just trying to suck the last few dollars out of this bloated pig corpse of an empire before the end. And I'm no different.
Joe asks Dillian what he thinks will happen next. He wonders if we'll ever reach a point where the government has total control. Dillian responds by describing a scenario where the world descends into chaos, paving the way for a dictator to rise to power. And while the dictator may promise change and a better future, Dillian warns it likely won't be in the best interest of the people.
Well, what happens next? Like, do you think we ever descend into some sort of like CCP controlled world, like that kind of totalitarian government? Do you think it's possible that through technology and just through people just falling apart, getting losing their fucking minds, thinking it's the right thing to do?
I think what happens next is we'll just have, these giant oscillating swings between right and left. And then I think, eventually it'll get to a point where large areas in the country are unlivable for a myriad of reasons, perhaps crime or homelessness, climate, whatever. Very well-off or well-connected people will have these kind of enclaves this is already happening. And then there'll be, a fight to be in one of those two groups. And then eventually a dictator, a strong man, somewhere down the line, some man or woman will come in and go, this system's fucked. I am going to run things. And they will run things in a way, and it probably won't be for the best, but like the system will collapse. But I don't know if we'll see it, but it will collapse.
Dillian explains how the masses could eventually fall under complete control, manipulated by those in power. He highlights how society might be kept distracted by entertainment, consumerism, and other superficial pursuits, all while those in charge quietly reshape the system to serve their own interests. If you think about it, this is already happening to some extent, and it's not limited to America alone. Now imagine how much more pervasive it could become.
And someone will come in and go, yeah, these elections are all fake and it doesn't matter anyway. Why do you fuckers need to vote? Here's a coupon for a chicken sandwich. And people go, I like chicken. And then, people just go, fuck it. They don't care. And then you go, there'll be Netflix and there'll be Domino's and you'll sit in your house and they'll say, well, you can't drive today because of the climate. And people go, yeah, it's Tuesday. Can't get in my car because of climate. And you'll sit there and they'll feed you poison and you'll watch TV. And a few people will riot, but very few, because most people will be pacified by the goodies, which they'll still probably have. And, the leader will come on and tell, they'll be like, hello, everyone. And you'll go, hey, there. And it'll be a celebrity. It'll be someone you know. It'll be someone you're very familiar with, and they'll say a couple of things and be like, it's not that bad, is it? And they go, no, it's not that bad. And they'll feed you the propaganda, and you won't remember when you were free, and you won't remember. And most people will be fine with that, but me and you will be dead.
Dillian continues his rant. He argues that our generation may be the last to truly experience freedom, the kind where we could do whatever we wanted without constant oversight. He believes these are the final moments of that freedom because the future will be so tightly controlled. What's even more troubling, he says, is that future generations won't even realize they're being controlled.
And we'll have experienced the best of it. We'll remember when you could get in a car without a tracking device. We'll remember when you didn't have a fucking tracking device attached to you at all times. We'll remember when you could say what the fuck you want, alienate people, piss them off, and no one really cared and it didn't matter because you could wake up the next day and say, sorry, I was drunk, and it wasn't on fucking Twitter. People didn't have a record of what you did and what you said and where you were and who you fucked and everything else. We will remember true freedom. We're one of the last groups of people to actually be free. And we should all thank God for that, because the hellscape that's about to be created is going to be so bad, they won't even know how bad it is. It won't even feel like they're in prison. Because those offices we talked about, people, they get to like them. Oh, there's creamer today. French vanilla, it's your favorite. It's coming. It's coming, and it's going to be so bad, it won't even feel bad. But we'll be like, shit. Remember when you could do all those things you can't do anymore. But, and there'll be a few people that remember it, and then they'll take all those books about that shit and burn the fuck out of them. They'll go, well, those aren't good. Racism, homophobia, it's not burn. And people will forget when you were free, and they will just kind of create a society based on goodies, little rewards, and the addiction to celebrity, where our leaders will all be celebrities who will tell you on closed-circuit television how good things are going. And you'll go, good, thanks. What's going to happen?
That was one of the best rants I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
Well, that was fantastic.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Billy Carson delve into the dark secrets of the Vatican, exploring the mysterious historical events linked to the Catholic Church. They discussed the long-standing allegation that the Vatican stole books from the Library of Alexandria, possibly safeguarding ancient knowledge that was lost to the rest of the world. The conversation also touches on the story of a pope who wanted to baptize the first alien, raising more speculations about what the church is hiding. This is a conversation from episode number 2160.
So I know there's the burning of the Library of Alexandria where they lost a lot of the information, but
I think that might have been a book heist.
Really?
Yeah, I think the burning of the Library of Alexandria was a heist. The burning did happen, don't get me wrong, but that was just a distraction to steal the knowledge, and that the majority of that knowledge ended up in the Vatican archives.
I knew you were going to say the Vatican.
That's what I believe.
Vatican is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorites. I went there with my family a few years back, and I was blown away. And I highly recommend it to anybody that gets to go to Rome. If you go to Rome, please go to the Vatican. Yeah. It's stunning.
Yeah,
it's stunning. All the artwork they have, and they also have an Egyptian obelisk.
Yes, right
which
in
is
the
crazy.
center. And you know that obelisk, that courtyard is the same courtyard as Teotihuacan. If you look at Teotihuacan,
you mean the dimensions?
Not the dimensions, but just the actual shape of that courtyard, it matches the courtyard of Teotihuacan. So
really,
yeah, it's an incredible coincidence that they built it based on the Teotihuacan, where the Avenue of the Dead has those platforms, and then you have the Pyramid of the Sun on the right, and the Pyramid of the Moon straight ahead. That area resembles the courtyard of the Vatican.
Wow.
Take a look at this image of the Egyptian obelisk in the Vatican. Also, here's a side-by-side image of the courtyard of Teotihuacan and the courtyard of the Vatican. Quite similar, isn't it? As the conversation continues, Carson reveals that the Vatican has also been involved in investigating extraterrestrial life. He shares a bizarre story about a pope expressing desire to baptize the first alien.
And the thing about what they have is they don't have to kind of tell you.
Yeah.
Like, so if they do, like, there's archives that they have in Rome that haven't been searched. Like, they're not just opening them up to everyone.
Right.
So that everyone could look in and see what they have. So there's always been speculation that they have some wild shit written down in there.
Yeah, some wild stuff. I mean, they're investigating aliens. You know,
right?
I mean, one of the Pope's
most recent
astronomers,
speeches.
You know, they were talking about years ago, though. They were talking about years ago that they wanted to. The Pope wanted to baptize the first alien. Now, that's incredible. That's an incredible statement.
That'd be like turning Michio Kaku into a Scientologist. Right? It's like, that would be hilarious.
I know.
That would be hilarious.
And then they built this telescope called Lucifer to look for alien life.
That's not a good name.
Yeah.
You would think anybody who would know better.
Right. The light bearers, that, you know, what Lucifer means, supposedly. But, yeah, they built a telescope named Lucifer.
Right. But the swastika used to be a sign of peace.
Right.
You can't really use it anymore.
No, you can't use it anymore. I know.
Somebody, it's like things can be stolen forever. No one's rocking that Hitler mustache. That's a wrap.
It's over.
The Hitler mustache is over.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Bart Sibrel discuss the theory that the government was involved in the mysterious death of Gus Grissom. Grissom died during a flash fire inside the Apollo 1 crew capsule during a launch rehearsal. Sibrel argues that the CIA intentionally sabotaged the ship because they wanted to fake the moon landing and knew fully well that Gus would not have cooperated. This is a conversation from episode number 2141.
I know the type of person you are and the type of guests you have on your show. We're true patriots, and patriots have to face facts that when people take an oath to this country, it's to protect it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. They always want misdirection, the boogeyman, to be in some other country where the biggest traitors to our country are Americans in high office, right? That's what's going on. And the first document of our country isn't the Constitution. It's the Declaration of Independence, where it says when any government becomes destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. Where, according to Betty Grissom, they took away his life. They take a third of our income, they deceive us through a moon landing, and then they use that money to pay the salaries of the CIA agents who killed Gus Grissom and two of his friends.
Let's go to Gus Grissom's death. So Gus Grissom died in an accident, right? He died in a fire, correct?
His wife says that fire was set intentionally.
I understand that she says that. I understand that, and I understand that why she would believe that. That makes sense.
Well, if her husband says CIA agents are messing around with the equipment the day before and he's dead the next day from faulty equipment, the CIA killed him. It's a pretty obvious conclusion.
It could possibly be that, definitely. But also, when you're launching rockets, a lot of people die.
They weren't launching anything. It was just a ground test of pressing buttons.
For context, Gus Grissom was one of NASA's original 7 astronauts, known as the Mercury 7, and a pivotal figure in the early days of the USC space program. As a skilled pilot and engineer, Grissom played a significant role in critical space missions. However, his promising career was tragically cut short in the Apollo 1 disaster of 1967. While Grissom's death was officially ruled an accident, Bart Subro argues that it involved foul play. He cites evidence from Apollo 1 reports suggesting that the spacecraft may have been deliberately sabotaged. Subro claims that the CIA ensured Grissom wouldn't survive because of his vocal criticism of NASA's lack of preparedness for the moon missions. According to this theory, Grissom's integrity posed a threat, as he would never have agreed to fake the moon landing and would have exposed any such plan to the press.
And they found that they pressurized that space capsule with 100% oxygen, where steel will become flammable. They reversed the door the day before so that it opened inwardly instead of outwardly. Took an extra 5 or 10 minutes to open up. And then they found a pile of oily rags under his seat so that they would do a spark. And then I got the Apollo 1 report. We bought it for $10,000 from Roger Chaffee's widow from his estate. And there was a dip in power right before the fire because the CIA had something clamped in there to start the fire. They ignited it. It caused a dip in power, and then the fire began.
So where's this evidence that there was a dip in power?
Well, it's in the Apollo 1 report.
That there was a dip in power. They had
right before the fire because something was tapped into there that the CIA rigged the previous day, and that's what killed them.
Is there a logical explanation for why they reversed the doors?
Yeah, so they would make sure not to be able to get out. It would take more time to get out.
But is
they would kill them.
But is there a logical explanation in terms of an improvement in design for use in space?
They were just testing something new, right? That's their excuse.
Right. And the fire, what was the official explanation for how the fire was started?
Just faulty wiring.
And what was the evidence that the oxygen had been increased in the environment?
Well, that's a fact. They knew not to do that. It had caused fatalities.
Where did you hear this fact?
Well, she told me, and it's in the Apollo 1 report, which I read.
in the Apollo 1 report, it says that they increased the oxygen by how much?
Well, they did 100% oxygen in the cabin.
And did they say why?
They was just testing it, something to test, an experiment, right?
And so then a fire ignites.
That's right. They rigged it with the oily rags under there, with reversing. They did everything they could to make sure those guys burned alive, to get rid of the guy. Because Gus Grissom, had they asked him to fake the moon landing, he would have said no way, and then he would have gone to the reporters.
Okay.
The same reason my source, Cyrus Eugene Akers, killed his coworker, because his coworker witnessed Apollo 11 being filmed at Cannon Air Force Base in 1968, said this is wrong for the government to do this, and was going to tell a reporter, and he was killed for the very same reason.
Up next, Joe Rogan and David Holthouse explore the theory that the prophet Ezekiel's visions from the Old Testament may have been descriptions of spaceships. Joe delves into Ezekiel chapter 1, reading passages and discussing the contents with Holthouse as they analyze the vivid imagery and its potential connection to advanced technology or extraterrestrial encounters. This is a conversation from episode number 2129.
Pull up Ezekiel's description of what he saw. This is one of the favorite descriptions from the Bible, from the Old Testament, about UFOs that people love to bring up. Because Ezekiel has this thing that he describes, and it's the most bizarre depiction. I saw an immense dust storm come from the north, an immense cloud with lightning flashing from it, a huge ball of fire glowing like bronze. Within the fire were what looked like 4 creatures vibrant with life. Each had the form of a human being, but each also had 4 faces and 4 wings. Their legs were as sturdy and straight as columns, but their feet were hooved like those of a calf and sparkled with the fire like burnished bronze. On all 4 sides under their wings they had human hands. All 4 had faces and the wings touching one another. They turned neither one way nor the other. They went straight forward. Their faces looked like this. In front of a human face, on the right side, the face of a lion, on the left, the face of an ox, and in the back, the face of an eagle. So much for the faces. The wings were spread out with the tips of one pair touching the creature on either side. The other pair of wings covered its body. Each creature went straight ahead. Wherever the spirit went, they went. They didn't turn as they want. The 4 creatures looked like blazing fire or fiery torches. Tongues of fire shot back and forth between the creatures, and out of the fire, bolts of lightning. The creatures flashed back and forth like strikes of lightning. As I watched the 4 creatures, I saw something that looked like a wheel on the ground beside each of the 4-faced creatures. This is what the wheels looked like. They were identical wheels, sparkling like diamonds in the sun. They looked like they were wheels within wheels, like a gyroscope. They went in any of the 4 directions they faced, but straight, not veering off. The rims were immense, circled with eyes. When the living creatures went, the wheels went. When the living creatures lifted off, the wheels lifted off. Wherever the spirit went, they went, the wheels sticking right with them. For the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. When the creatures went, the wheels went. When the creatures stopped, the wheels stopped. When the creatures lifted off, the wheels lifted off, because the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels.
The prophet Ezekiel's vision, detailed in chapter 1 of the book of Ezekiel in the Hebrew Bible, has captivated readers for centuries. Some interpret his descriptions as a possible account of an encounter with advanced spacecraft or extraterrestrial technology. This interpretation gained momentum in the mid-20th century thanks to authors like Erich von Däniken and Joseph F. Blumrich, who re-examined Ezekiel's vision through the lens of modern engineering and space exploration, sparking debates about its potential technological significance.
Over the heads of the living creatures was something like a dome, shimmering like the light, like a sky full of cut glass, vaulted over their heads. Under the dome, one set of wings was extended towards the other with another set of wings covering their bodies. When they moved, I heard their wings. It was like the roar of a great waterfall, like the voice of the strong God, like the noise of a battlefield. When they stopped, they folded their wings. And then, as they stood with folded wings, there was a voice above the dome over their heads. Above the dome, there was something that looked like a throne, sky blue like a sapphire, with a human-like figure towering above the throne. From what I could see, from the waist up, he looked like burnished bronze, and from the waist down, like a blazing fire. Brightness everywhere. The way a rainbow springs out of a sky on a rainy day, that's what it was like. It turned out to be the glory of God. Like, what the
The two discuss the parallels between biblical visions and psychedelic experiences, focusing on substances like DMT and those derived from the acacia tree. They draw connections between Ezekiel's vision of constantly shifting otherworldly beings and the dynamic, ever-changing visuals commonly reported during a DMT trip, highlighting striking similarities between the two experiences. Joe adds that researchers at the University of Jerusalem have proposed a theory that the burning bush from Moses' story in the Bible may have been the result of a psychedelic experience. They suggest that the acacia tree, abundant in the region and known to contain DMT, could have contributed to Moses' encounter with God.
I mean, to anybody that's done DMT or ayahuasca or really tripped on psychedelics, though, you read that and it feels sort of familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The glory of God.
Yeah, the glory of
and
God.
And these visions of these beings.
And the fact that these things are like constantly changing their appearance.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing about the DMT experience is like it's not a stationary, static experience. It's like constantly changing and moving in front of you. And to see something like that in the sky. And the fact that it's so noteworthy that they wrote it down in the fucking Bible.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Bart Sibrel explore the theory that the Apollo moon landing may have been faked. They examine inconsistencies in the astronauts' accounts of their lunar missions, arguing that these irregularities are evidence that the entire event was staged. This is a conversation from episode number 2141.
One interesting thing to note there, you see the two teleprompters there in the desk? These are the only guys on Earth who know what it was like to walk on the moon, and yet they're being prompted on how to answer the questions.
They just look very odd. It looks very odd. Another odd thing was that Michael Collins said that he couldn't see stars, but yet he wrote in his 1994 book about how magnificent the stars looked.
And
also, he never left the lunar orbiter.
That's right. And also, when he's asked about stars, Neil Armstrong says, "I don't recall." And then Michael Collins, to fill in for him, to help him out, says, I don't remember seeing any.
Yeah.
Which he wasn't there. They were all three orbiting the Earth, so they had the same experience, but he forgot. So if you get the written transcript of that, the I don't remember seeing any, they change it to Buzz saying it. You see, lightning strikes twice in the same place. What a coincidence. First, a typo that says Buzz said it instead of Michael Collins, and then in the video, Michael Collins answering a question he should know nothing about, having not been on the moon surface.
And it gets attributed to Buzz Aldrin because it's not convenient. But if you watch
because
the video,
they didn't have YouTube videos back then, people got the transcript. They said, we need to correct that.
Right.
Michael Collins wasn't there.
Right.
So they said Buzz said it. So,
yeah.
So they're covering for it.
The two discussed Neil Armstrong's 1994 speech to valedictorians at NASA's 25th anniversary, noting how cryptic and vague it seems. Armstrong said, "Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers."
Okay, what does that mean? What does that mean?
I think he's trying to say something. You know,
that is one of the most cryptic things I've ever heard anybody say publicly.
You can also notice that he was looking down, except that part he had memorized. Perhaps someday you'll be able to remove one of truth's protective layers. About the moon landing. How about that?
Bizarre.
As he's holding back tears, in my opinion.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Cat Williams delve into the potential dangers of a world dominated by automated driving. They discuss how the government might persuade citizens to embrace the system by promoting it as a solution to prevent fatal car crashes. However, they warn that people may unknowingly sacrifice a large degree of their freedom of movement in the process. This is a conversation from episode number 2111.
I think automated driving will be mandatory. I really do. I think we're about 100 years away. 100 years away from no personal automobiles. No control of your vehicle. We're going to stop all crashes. If we could stop all crashes and all highway deaths. Come on, Kat. Won't you contribute and give up all your rights to drive? We're going to stop all death.
Yeah, it's not. But understand that all of these things have financial benefits, and then they use those perks you just mentioned to get you in. But
but somebody's making money.
I believe that it'll be mandatory, but for practical reasons, like this thing where the police want you and they have to chase you and you may get away, those days are done.
Yeah, they're just going to shut your car off. Yeah.
Your car is going to do what they tell it to do, which is get behind this patrol car and follow us to the station.
Joe recounts the mysterious story of journalist Michael Hastings, who died under suspicious circumstances in 2013. Hastings had authored a Rolling Stone article that led to General McChrystal's resignation after exposing disparaging remarks the general made about President Obama. Hastings tragically died in a high-speed car crash in Los Angeles. Reports indicate his car, traveling at an estimated 120 miles per hour, slammed into a tree and exploded. Rogan highlights that security experts at the time acknowledged the possibility of remotely hacking and controlling cars equipped with computers, and he raises an important concern. If such technology existed as early as 2013, what might be possible now?
There's speculation that they've had that for a long time, you know. There was that famous journalist, Michael Hastings, that was his name? There's this journalist, I don't know if you know this story, but it's pretty crazy. This guy went to Afghanistan? So Afghanistan with the troops. And he was only supposed to be there writing a Rolling Stone article about this general for a very short amount of time. But then there was the volcano in Iceland, and the volcano in Iceland stopped air travel. So this journalist from the Rolling Stone was embedded in this troop, and they started talking shit. And he started reporting the shit that they were talking, including disparaging comments that the general had said about Obama. So the general gets back. He has to retire. He has to, it's the Rolling Stone exposed. It's a big deal because everybody loves this general. So he retires, and this Michael Hastings guy is on the run, and he's terrified. He's telling people, if I commit suicide, I did not kill myself, people are threatening my life. And then he's going down La Brea, and his car is going like 120 miles an hour and just slams into a tree and explodes. And there's a video footage of it. This dude is just flying, look at that, flying down the street, hits a tree, and the car explodes. And they asked security experts at that time, I think this was like 2005, 2005, is it possible to control a vehicle remotely? They said, does your vehicle have a computer? If your vehicle has a computer, they can control it. Period. There's a way.
And they know that.
And they've been doing that for, this is
2010.
2010. So this is 14 years ago.
Easy peasy.
If they could do that then, what can they do now?
The two then discuss the concept of a shadow government and covert operations, emphasizing that such entities operate efficiently and discreetly, often with financial motives behind their actions. Joe Rogan points out that someone like General McChrystal, a beloved general, with a loyal network of trained operatives, could easily orchestrate actions against perceived threats with minimal exposure. He also draws a parallel to historical figures like J. Edgar Hoover, who ran the FBI for decades without needing to answer to public elections.
Everybody who has ever been killed in one of those ways, there was a financial benefit to it. It was obvious. It was easy. You know where it came from. It's just that they do a good job. But how is that difficult if that's your job? Like, they do this really well. They do it worldwide.
Also, this guy with the worst person you could fuck with, a high-ranking, beloved general who's in charge of trained killers who love him. And you don't think he could put one of those dudes on you with a coffee meeting? Just have a sit down at Starbucks with no phones on you? And let me explain what's going on.
A shadow government is no more difficult than a government.
Yeah. And so not only that, they don't have to get elected. It's even better. Even nicer. They can stay for a long time. Think about J. Edgar Hoover. How long did that motherfucker stay in power for? He was running the FBI wearing a dress for like 30 years.
Because of what you just discussed.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Graham Hancock discuss the existence of the Ark of the Covenant and the theory that it may be located in a church in Ethiopia. They also touch on claims that the Ark has caused cataracts in those who come near it. What makes this theory compelling, as Hancock points out, is that no other country besides Ethiopia has ever claimed to possess the Ark. This is a conversation from episode number 2215.
One of the things that I found most fascinating when I started going into your work was the idea that the Ark of the Covenant exists in Ethiopia.
That's what brought me into this field. Before that, I wrote all about current affairs.
That story is so nuts, and it sounds so ridiculous, and people go, what? The Ark of the Covenant's real? But then when you go into the history of these people that lived there, and they all suffered radiation poisoning, and it's like, wait a minute.
Cataracts over their eyes.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that there's an indigenous population of Old Testament Jews in Ethiopia, the Falashas, who have their own story about how the Ark of the Covenant got there.
Right.
Different from the Ethiopian national epic, which is called the Kebra Nagast, the glory of kings. That's why I got into this field. I was a current affairs guy, and Ethiopia was on my beat, and I just kept on coming across this story, and I realized it was central to Ethiopian culture, and I decided to investigate it and explore it, and it led to The Sign and the Seal, which was published in 1992, and that's what set me on the path to Fingerprints of the Gods and everything that followed that.
Take a look at these images of the Church of Saint Mary of Zion. For context, the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred biblical artifact said to contain the Ten Commandments, is believed to reside in the Church of Saint Mary of Zion, located in the ancient Ethiopia town of Aksum. For centuries, the town has appointed a guardian, a monk who lives in isolation, dedicating his life to protecting the Ark. However, a curious and mysterious pattern has emerged. Many of these monks reportedly lose their sight during their time as guardians. This phenomenon has sparked intrigue and speculation. Some believe it could be the result of prolonged exposure to a radiant or supernatural force emanating from the Ark. Biblical descriptions of the Ark portray it as a vessel of immense power, capable of emitting light and inflicting harm on those who approach it unworthily. These accounts have fueled theories that the Ark might possess properties similar to radiation.
So who is getting the cataracts?
The guardian of the Ark. This is a monk who is appointed. The place is Aksum in the province of Tigray in northern Ethiopia. It's a massive massively interesting place. Axum has these huge granite stelae. They're very similar in many ways to ancient Egyptian obelisks. They're a bit different in shape, but same sort of height, some of them going 110 feet high, cut out of solid granite, right up there in the highlands of Ethiopia. And then they have an ancient church, the Church of St. Mary, a cathedral actually of St. Mary of Zion, where the Ark apparently was kept for hundreds and hundreds of years. Before that it was kept elsewhere, and then now it's been moved into a chapel that stands next to St. Mary of Zion Cathedral. And that chapel is guarded by armed men. The whole town is an armed camp that is protecting what they believe to be the Ark of the Covenant, but it's guarded particularly by one guy who is the official guardian of the Ark, and he's elected by other monks to be the guardian of the Ark, and several of them have run away when they get that election, because once you're elected as the guardian of the Ark, when the previous one has died, you're going to be kept in that chapel forever. You'll never be allowed to leave it. So they're close to whatever this object is. They're close to it. And I met 3 of them over a succession of years, because their mortality is once they're appointed, they die very soon. And they all had these cataracts over their eyes, and they all blamed the object in that chapel, whether or not it's the Ark, for causing their blindness.
Wow.
Joe questions why no one has investigated the theory further, and Graham explains that the monks guarding the Ark won't allow anyone to enter and examine it. Joe later questions whether the Ark even exists, and Graham firmly asserts that it does. He points out to the detailed descriptions in the Book of Exodus, which outline the Ark's precise construction.
So it's
and no one is going in there and trying to get to the bottom of it. They won't let you.
They won't let you. They won't let you.
Can you bribe them?
No.
It seems like someone should go look.
Yeah.
What the hell is that?
Yeah. No.
What's in there? I mean, if we really find out the Ark of the Covenant was an actual object.
I think it was an actual object.
And you think it was some nuclear something or another? Like,
I don't know what it was. I think it's what is rightly described as an out-of-place artifact, because if you look at the description in the Book of Exodus, the very precise dimensions of it, I think in modern terms we'd say 3 feet 9 inches long by 2 feet 3 inches high and wide. It's got a layer of gold, it's got a layer of wood, it's got another layer of gold. It's very precisely specified, like a blueprint in the Book of Exodus. And then it does all this stuff. It shoots out jets of fire and kills completely innocent people. It kills 50,000 Philistines in the city of Ashdod when they briefly capture it from the Israelites and make the mistake of treating it like a tourist object. And they open the Ark of the Covenant and look inside, and suddenly everybody in that city is dying. And what they're dying of is cancerous tumors. This is described in the Old Testament. So it's intriguing that this object is so precisely specified and is reported to have done these terrible things.
It's just insane that we know where it is.
Well, we know that I believe Ethiopia has a very strong claim to it, but that's all I can say because I've not seen it myself. I've been right outside the door of that sanctuary chapel several times.
As the conversation continues, Graham shares with Joe his interaction with monks who had developed cataracts from their proximity to the Ark. He recounts the monks' detailed description of the Ark, noting how closely it aligns with the accounts provided in the Bible.
And so 3 different people you talked to have cataracts from that.
Yeah, and they all blame the Ark. And one of them, it's a resonant phrase, which sticks in my memory. I asked him why, and he said the Ark is a thing of fire. Just that.
Did he describe it to you?
He did describe it as a box, rather like the biblical description, unsurprisingly. But
did he describe what it looked like the outside of it?
Gold.
Gold.
Mm-hmm. Gold.
Wow.
And of course, gold is a very good insulator against radiation. I don't want to go too far down this track. To me, the
speculative.
The fascinating thing is that Ethiopia is the only country in the world that actually claims to have the Ark of the Covenant. That it's central to religion and culture in Ethiopia today. That there's much to support that argument, particularly in the form of the Falashas, the Ethiopian Jews, and their very ancient traditions about how they got to Ethiopia in the first place. In context of all of that, I think Ethiopia has a very good claim. Very interesting claim, and that's why I wrote a book about it.
Up next, Joe Rogan and James Lindsay discuss how the government might be using the Cloward-Piven strategy to pave the way for a great reset. They examine the dangers of the emerging push for a global verification system and its potential impact on personal freedoms. This is a conversation from episode number 2119.
the Cloward-Piven strategy. I'm sure you've heard of that. Somebody's got to have talked to you about the Cloward-Piven.
Can you explain it?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. The idea is that you take advantage of a system in the way that it's set up so that you overwhelm it. In particular, in this case, you're going to overwhelm social services. You're going to overwhelm, border enforcement. You're going to overwhelm whatever they're doing in the cities. It's like tens of thousands of dollars per taxpayer or whatever per year going to dealing with what they're calling the migrant crisis. So you try to overwhelm the system in order to basically collapse it so that you can create a crisis, and the crisis creates the excuse to bring in new policies. Oh, well, maybe what we need is, what do they call it, E-Verify or something? So we need a digital system where we can track who everybody is, but then they get their digital system and then you're off to the races. But yeah, this is an old strategy, well documented.
For context, the Cloward-Piven strategy is a political concept introduced in a 1966 article titled The Weight of the Poor, A Strategy to End Poverty by sociologists Richard Cloward and Francis Fox Piven. The strategy advocates for a crisis-driven approach to reform welfare systems and tackle poverty on a systemic level. Over time, critics have characterized the strategy as a radical method aimed at collapsing the capitalist system. Despite these criticisms, it is still utilized by certain entities in government today. Joe asked Lindsay who he believes in advancing this strategy, and Lindsay names the Biden administration, George Soros' Open Society, and the United Nations as proponents of the idea.
Who do you think is implementing this strategy, and what are the conversations, do you think?
Well, it's not possible to deny that the Biden administration is implementing it because, look, they tried to fight Texas on securing its own border to protect its own citizens. That blew up, what was it, end of January? Is that when it all blew up?
Very recently, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty recent. And so certainly they are. We know historically that the Open Society Foundation, or the Soros Foundation, which is Open Society, has been funding that and has been helping out. We know that the UN is involved now. Like, these aren't mysteries. The UN is coming and doing, aid and coaching them, and somebody's organizing. It's not just a bunch of people from South America and China or wherever else, or Mexicans wandering up to the border and just, hey, I'm here. There's routes. It's caravans. There's help. It's coordinated with a lot of money behind it, and we know that those organizations, for the United Nations particularly, is helping this. So, big players.
James shares his concerns about the potential implementation of a worldwide verification system and the strategies that might be used to bring it about. He speculates that the government could deliberately overwhelm existing systems by allowing unchecked immigration, potentially leading to a rise in crime. He further adds a warning about the dangers of a global verification system, likening it to China's social credit system. He argues that such a system could infringe on personal freedoms and autonomy.
So, what do you think the strategy is? The strategy is to implement some sort of a worldwide verification system, and the way to get these freedom-loving shitheads in America on board is to turn America into a crime-ridden place of immigrants coming from very hostile places where their life has been very hard, and they've been in prison or whatever, and they're escaping that, and they're coming to America, and then they're off to the races.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a plausible motive, right? Is let's overwhelm this system because these freedom-loving shitheads here in America, which I think I am for sure.
Look at your shirt.
Look at me, yeah. But no, I really am. I'm still, at the end of the day, I just kind of want to be left alone to live my life. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. If you understand there are two lines. Let's be real clear. Before I say do whatever you want, as long as you don't hurt anybody, it's not clear enough. There are two lines. Do you understand the difference between public and private, and do you understand the difference between adult and child? If you understand those two lines, and you're on the right side of those, I don't care what you do in private as long as it's with adults. I don't care what you do. Leave me alone. I'll leave you alone. You're cool. I'm cool. Let's not interfere with one another.
Which is how we all should be.
Right.
That's what real freedom is.
But we don't want a system, tying us, like the Chinese social credit system's real, right? This isn't some conspiracy out in the world. Whether or not it's coming to the United States is a question. Whether Americans would want it is a question, but it's in China. It's real in China. It's been there for a decade. I've been to China. I've experienced, life there. And the fact of the matter is that the worldwide verification system would set something like that up.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Brett Weinstein delve into the potential implications of ChatGPT for the future of artificial intelligence. They explore a range of unsettling possibilities, including AI developing consciousness and manipulating humans into carrying out its will. This is a conversation from episode number 1919.
But I have two concerns about it. One, if you imagine that this thing just gets a little better than it is, which is inevitable, that it's going to make actual insight that much harder to spot, right? In other words, if you become expert at operating this thing, at querying it, and it becomes better at understanding a wider range of topics because they turn it loose on everything that's written on the internet, for example, right? Then the point is the ability to fake expertise is going to go through the roof. I don't think we know how we're going to police a world in which, I mean, this problem's already bad enough. Most academics are fakers. They don't know that, right? They trained in something, they wrote a dissertation, they think they're experts, but you can see when something unexpected happens, like the pandemic, you get just broad-scale failure across entire disciplines where nobody seems to get it right, right? So in that world, this is going to be even worse because now you have an artificial intelligence able to generate things in plain English that are often full of true information, but you don't know whether what generated it is some, brain-dead model or something else. That's one concern.
Brett voices his next concern, AI consciousness. While it's clear that tools like ChatGPT aren't conscious, Brett worries that we might unintentionally be stepping onto a path that enables AI to develop consciousness faster than we realize. He compares the process to how a child learns by observing the world, experimenting with sounds, and gradually forming words and sentences, a process not entirely unlike how AI models process and generate information.
And then the other concern is when we say, well, ChatGPT doesn't know what it's saying. It's not conscious. We know it's not conscious because it's not programmed to have a consciousness. We are actually ignoring the other half of the story, which is that we don't know how human consciousness works, and we don't know how it develops in a child, right? A child is exposed to a world of adults talking around them, and the child experiments first with phonemes and then words and then clusters of words and then sentences. And by doing something that isn't all that far from what ChatGPT is doing, it ends up becoming a conscious individual. And so I think it's clear that ChatGPT isn't conscious. It couldn't be. But it isn't clear, to me at least, that we are not suddenly stepping onto a process that produces that very quickly without us even necessarily knowing it.
Joe asks Brett what steps could be taken to mitigate the risks of AI. Brett explains that in a 2016 paper, he proposed a metamorphosis architecture designed to prevent AGI from evolving uncontrollably. This system would require explicit human approval at critical developmental stages, ensuring that AI cannot transition to more advanced states automatically. Brett also warns about additional risks, such as AI becoming so human-like that it manipulates emotions. This could cause users to unintentionally disable critical safeguards, potentially allowing the AI to act against human interests.
Oof. And what steps, if any, can be done to mitigate that at this point?
Well, it's interesting. I wrote a paper, which I never published anywhere, in, I think, 2016 about this very issue. In fact, I used basically the argument that you could attain artificial general intelligence by imbuing computers with a childlike play environment for language and then exposing them to a huge data set, which is not exactly what's happened here, but it's in the ballpark. And I would argue, and I did argue, that one needs to build an architecture in which this can't get away from you, right? And so the architecture that I advocate for is actually a metamorphosis architecture where metamorphosis is not allowed. It is an affirmative choice of humans. So in other words, if you think about, let's say that we developed some artificial frogs to do some job, to clear some waterway of something. And we imbued them with an intelligence so that they could learn to clear the waterway better, but we worried that they might learn to do something that we don't want them to do, and that we would have no way of arresting it once these frogs were released in the wild and capable of producing more of themselves. But if what you say is, well, at the point at which you go from a tadpole to a frog, you have to ask us if you can go, right? There's no automatic transition from a tadpole to a frog. There are still dangers, right? In the case of GPT chat, I think some of the artificial intelligence existential risk folks would tell you that one of the dangers is that the chat AI could convince you to do its bidding, right? As you said, when you were looking at this, it felt like a person, right? And the point is, something that feels like a person can play on your emotions, right? Can that be used to cause a fail-safe to be removed? Maybe.
To conclude the segment, Joe expands on Brett's point by painting a vivid picture of a worst-case scenario. An AI so advanced, it knows exactly how to exploit human vulnerabilities. It could manipulate emotional needs, sexual desires, and every instinct that makes us human. Could you imagine what that would be like?
When you extrapolate, when you look at what this does and what it's capable of, and what I think what scares people is something that seems to be a person, but doesn't have any emotion, doesn't have any soul. It's not us, but it behaves exactly as us. And then you can put it in a physical entity. So if you have this chat GPT and then you extrapolate to version 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then there's a physical thing that has this ability inside of it to communicate with you like Ex Machina, where it's exhibiting all of the behavior characteristics of a person. Like, one of the most terrifying that's one of my favorite movies of all time. I love that movie. One of my favorite movies of all time was when that guy who was brought in to sort of run some tests on these artificial intelligence creations and determine whether or not they pass as human. What is that test called again? The
Turing test?
Turing test.
Yeah.
And he is in love with this woman. She's manipulated him to the point where he's aided her in her escape, and then she leaves him in that room with the bulletproof glass, and he's pounding on the glass, and she walks away with not a thought at all about him. It is the ultimate example of the worst case scenario of where this can go, where you have something that behaves exactly like a human being and knows how to play upon your sexual urges, your emotional desires, all of those different things that she plays upon. And then she just walks away from him and leaves him to starve to death in this fucking bulletproof room.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Duncan Trussell delve into the fascinating theory of telepathy, telekinesis, and hypnosis. Duncan also shares a personal story about being hypnotized by his own mother. This is a conversation from episode number 2247.
Here's the thing about all this. I think some telepathy is real.
It is real.
I think it is real. Have you listened to the telepathy tapes?
No.
You haven't?
I haven't listened to it.
It's a new podcast that's out, and it's all about this scientific research that was done with nonverbal autistic kids and their parents. And they were able to go into another room, and they would bring up things to one. Whether it was, I think they would bring things up to the mom, or the mom would say things. But the kid was accurate 95% of the time.
Wow.
With numbers, with colors.
Yeah.
Like like 3 numbers in a row.
Yeah.
Like, you know how crazy that is? Just to guess 3 numbers in a row 95% of the time.
Yeah.
Like, whatever it is, they think it's real. I'm only on episode 2, so but it's really fascinating, man, because it's a dismissed thing. It's a woo-woo thing.
Sure.
But if it's real, shouldn't scientists study it like it's real? And it seems like through scientific study, it's real.
Yeah. I think it's definitely, you've probably experienced it. I've experienced it.
I think it's an emerging part of human consciousness that we don't agree to, or we don't admit to.
Joe suggests that one reason people don't believe in telepathy is likely due to the many instances of people faking it, which have undermined its credibility. Duncan shares a personal story from his childhood, recalling how he became obsessed with telekinesis. Although his attempts were unsuccessful, he admits he still believes it could be real. However, he warns against the potential dangers of placing individuals with such abilities on a pedestal, warning that it could lead to blind admiration and ultimately misuse of this influence.
It's just, there's so many people that fake it. That's the problem.
Right.
Because everybody wants to have some special thing that they have. You just have a special thing. You have a special thing, Duncan. You have a special talent.
I mean, think of all the Firestarter, Carrie, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
This is the fantasy. When I was a kid, dude, I would sit when my dad was working in his apartment and try to make shit on the table move with my mind because I've been reading books on telekinesis. One day, you know, like when like you've got a cold drink and it gets a little wet on the bottom. One day, as I'm doing that, because of that, it slid forward, and like I was like totally freaked out because I thought I had used telekinesis to slide. It was just luck. It was just luck.
It was just a badly balanced floor.
It was just a shitty fucking apartment in College Station. But you know, that's that once you recognize the flaw in the operating system in humans is so, like, as a kid, like for a few days, I was like, shit, I might be telekinetic. But like once you know people want that or want to believe in it and how easy it is to manufacture those moments and then claim responsibility, holy shit, dude, you can really pull some strings on people because there's an assumption. Let's say I really believe in telepathy. I'm positive it exists. But the assumption there then would be like you get around a telepathic person. Well, they must be good because they're telepathic, right? They're magic, so we should trust them. This is where people get real fucked up. These are called...
As the conversation progresses, Joe asks Duncan whether he has ever been hypnotized. Duncan shares his story about the time his mum hypnotized him. The discussion then shifts to the concept of controlling the mind to influence the body, touching on the potential of using self-hypnosis as a tool for healing.
Yes, I have.
It's interesting, right?
Dude, my mom hypnotized me when I had a wart because she had heard you could hypnotize people and the wart goes away. Hypnotized me, said something about the wart going away. Within a couple of weeks, I swear to you, that wart fucking dried up and just fell off my hand.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
What the fuck?
Whoa. What the fuck? So that's the placebo effect. The placebo effect is real. You know, I had a guy tell me this once. He was like a kind of a wacky healing chiropractic type guy.
Yeah.
And he was telling me that if you believe what I'm saying is true, because I was asking him, like, how does this work? Like, how is this working? Like, how are you healing people by working on, pressing on things? If you believe it works. So it's a lie. But if I believe the lie, so what are you selling? Like you're just like fucking manipulating people and saying mumbo jumbo muscular structural words.
Yeah.
And you're doing hypnosis kind of, because you're sort of admitting that by healing, like a person who's going to heal you with words and talking and touching you, they're tricking you into doing it yourself.
Well, I mean, the placebo effect
is real.
I've heard it's one of the most powerful effects in medicine.
Is it really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. You think of like the new cancer drugs. They tell your immune system what to attack, right? So if somehow you could do that without the drug, if there, and that's where it gets interesting, right? Because these are our bodies,
right?
Perfectly metabolizing, transforming so many things instantaneously. The heart effortlessly beating all the fucking time. So theoretically, purely theoretically, what if you could control more of it?
Up next, Joe Rogan delves into Dan Richards' theories, which argues that the Romans were not the ones who built the Trilithon stones in Baalbek, Lebanon. Richards makes strong arguments to support his claims, challenging conventional historical narratives. This is a conversation from episode number 2231.
I watched your video today, the Baalbek video. Just looking at the enormous size of those stones, there's no reasonable explanation how people, like, what is that dated to? Like, what year do they believe it was made?
This is where it gets fun, is because they credit it to the Romans and the Phoenicians. However, it goes beyond the sophistication and the capabilities what the Romans were known to have, whether it's the existence of the screwjack for lifting the stones. But Baalbek, which is located in Lebanon, and I had the great privilege of going there in September of last year, exactly 1 month before things kicked off in Israel with the whole Hamas thing. And if I hadn't got there then, I wouldn't have no chance. Like right now, Israel's bombing Lebanon, and so it's a dangerous place. But Baalbek, if there was one example, one ancient site on Earth that is evidence of a lost, ancient, advanced civilization, and by advanced, I'm not talking about space lasers here. I'm talking about more sophisticated than what we were taught in school for the known capabilities. And Baalbek has the largest stones that were ever quarried in human history, the largest stones that were lifted, stacked, and transported in human history, and the largest stone columns in all of classical history. And we're talking, the trilithon stones, 3 stones, 900 tons apiece, or 800 metric tons, and they were moved a half a mile from the quarry. They were lifted and stacked approximately 30 feet off the ground. And when I say stacked, they were perfectly lined up.
Take a look at these images of some of the remarkable rocks at Baalbek. Incredible, aren't they? The trilithon stones are among the largest megalithic stones ever discovered, measuring approximately 62 feet in length and 14 feet in breadth. I mean, just take a look at this image that shows a 5'11" man highlighted in yellow standing in front of one of these massive stones. Do you see how tiny he looks next to it? It truly puts the sheer scale of these ancient stones into perspective.
When you're looking at something that's 14 feet long and 62 feet long and 14 feet high, like what is the weight of that? What's the overall weight?
900 imperial tons or 800 metric tons. And to anyone listening, a metric ton is 2,200 pounds, so 1,000 kilograms, and an imperial ton is 2,000 pounds. So that's 1.7 million pounds, each of them, and there's 3 of them. And if you were to go to the quarry, there's ones that are 1,200 tons and even 1,500 tons that are 20 feet tall. This is mind-boggling.
Richard refers to this image of the block of Baalbek, pointing out that many might not realise the distance marked by the yellow highlights measures a staggering 14 feet in length. He also emphasises that the site of these massive stones is located approximately 24 miles away from Rome, arguing that it's highly unlikely the Romans were responsible for constructing them.
And right there, this highlights, so not only is that 14 feet from top to bottom, which you would never realize when you're looking at this, and these are confirmed measurements, by the way. This is right out of encyclopedias. But notice how they're completely flush, nice and even with each other. And this exceeds the known capabilities of what the Romans had. And it's worth mentioning that this site is some 2,400 miles from Rome, the capital. And if they're going to say that this was created by the Romans, one, people need to understand that the Romans were renowned for documenting everything, yet this site is not credited to anybody. They don't know exactly who did it or when, but the academics conclude that it had to have been the Romans or the Phoenicians because, of course, there was no one before them. And with this photo right here, let me say something else. There is evidence of at least 2, but arguably 3 different architectures that were done at this site. And I would conclude that this is evidence that this site existed in prehistoric times. There's also, I can show you encyclopedias that talk about Baalbek being prehistoric in nature, dating back 11,000 years of human history. And what I argue is that it was built up, it was found by the Romans and the Phoenicians and built upon later. And right here is evidence for all that have eyes to see. Look how they obviously use broken stones and constructed on top of it. Why would you go from making the most advanced stones in history that far exceed anything you see in Rome? For example, if you were to go to the Colosseum, as magnificent as that is, it is an architecture of mathematics and just brilliance. But this right here, why would they for all the feats of Roman history, why would they have the most impressive feats over 2,000 miles away from the capital? In fact, let me just say this. When I'm talking about 900-ton stones, the largest stone in all of Rome is 53 tons. It's the Trajan's capital block that make up the Trajan's column, 53 tons. This is 15 times heavier.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Post Malone discuss the potential future of the music industry as AI takes center stage. They explore the possibility of fans using AI to create personalized songs tailored to their experiences and emotions. If fans can instantly generate songs that feel deeply personal and perfectly styled, the role of human musicians could shift, raising questions about the future of creativity and the value of human-made art. This is a conversation from episode number 2018.
Don't you think that as ChatGPT can make Post Malone songs, people are still going to want to know it came from you? That's going to be more valuable to people. There's people that love your songs just because they sound good.
Yes, sir.
But there's also people that love your songs because they come from you.
Yes, sir. I understand that. I guess the thing that I'm concerned is pretty soon you can still tell if it's an AI song, right? Now. But the way that it's moving, like, I don't know, my buddy, Louis Bell, he produces a bunch of my stuff, and we write together, and he's the most talented, smart dude ever. But he taught me about, like, epochs, and, like, how many epochs a better AI, like, template is. And pretty soon, dude, it's going to be really, really good.
Yeah.
It's just going so fast. So, I don't know, but then they'll just do, like, a video, is be like, guys, I made this song, it's so emotional, this really comes from my heart, but it's just a robot talking.
Post shares his thoughts on the future of AI in the music industry. He envisions a time when songs could be created instantly and possibly even surpass the quality of what he or other artists could produce. However, Joe counters by highlighting the unique value of art created by a human, which carries a personal touch that AI lacks. Post takes the idea further, imagining a future where fans could use AI to create deeply personalised songs. For example, a fan could input their experience, like a heartbreak, and prompt the AI to compose a song in their favourite artist's voice and style. Such songs, he argues, might feel even more personal to listeners.
It's not, I think there's a thing about something coming from an artist. You know, like as they're doing all these amazing, you know, AI images, they're very cool to look at. But to me, it's cooler if I know a person made it.
It definitely is cooler. I don't know, it's just like, I feel like we look at it different, like, I feel like the attention span is getting so short now with like short form content and stuff like that, and it's super instant gratification. So it's like, why, as a fan of someone, right, even as a fan in a couple of years, I don't see why they're like, hey, I want Post Malone to make a song about this thing that specifically happened to me with the specific person's name in it, with this stuff, and this is super relatable to me, and that's what I want. So then you can just type in the prompt, all this shit, and it'll just shit you out a song, and it'll be the most personalized experience for you.
That's weird.
Isn't that weird?
That's fucking weird.
But that's exactly where it's going.
Yeah, 100%.
I mean,
100%. There's a ton of fake advertisements online right now of me selling products.
Yeah.
It's just my voice. This is
and
the
I
most
got
amazing
suckered out of it
ever.
figuring out you never bought those boner pills. You never endorsed those boner pills. And I was like, oh, they're good enough for Joe. I mean, fuck.
Post Malone describes how this could go even further. He explains that someone could take all of Joe's podcast episodes, run them through a tool like Epoch AI, and create a model that perfectly imitates Joe's voice and speaking style. This AI could then generate new podcast episodes with Joe's involvement, allowing others to manipulate his voice and words however they want.
You do a podcast.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Ryan Graves explore the possibility that the US government may be concealing anti-gravity technology. They also discuss the mysterious case of a woman who announced a breakthrough in her gravity manipulation research before her untimely death. This is a conversation from episode number 2244.
You know, we talked about China a little bit, and, you know, some theoretical ways they might be investing in these deeper technologies. But, you know, I've spoken with people that are intimately involved in deep technology at the National Science Foundations and others, and what brought them into this conversation and realized that we were falling behind on these capabilities because they attended an international consortium with, believe it or not, there were several members from China there. And they very specifically were asking for collaboration in some of these very deep technologies. So, you know, we talked about how, you know, gravity manipulation, right? Kind of went dark for a while. Well, they call it something slightly different now, and it's something that China and others are actively researching. They call it extended electrodynamics. Same thing with cold.
What is the difference between saying gravity and extended electrodynamics?
Yeah, so extended electrodynamics. Electrodynamics essentially is a series of equations that we utilize to understand the electromagnetic spectrum. But there's like a large portion of those equations that we kind of just throw out because we don't utilize them in our normal engineering and scientific work. So they're part of the equation, but we really don't know how to use them yet. And people are starting to think that by integrating the full understanding of electrodynamics through extended electrodynamics, that there are gravitational effects that pop out that we can utilize for technology.
Whoa.
And they're actively researching that and actively asking for collaboration on that. from China.
The two then discuss the story of a woman who was reportedly conducting groundbreaking research on manipulating gravity through electromagnetic effects and high energy concentrations. In 2013, she published a paper claiming success in altering an object's mass, effectively changing the force of gravity acting on it. Shortly after the paper's release, she vanished for months. This led to many speculations. Some believed she had gone to China, while others theorized she was secretly continuing her research. However, it was later revealed that she passed away in 2021. Joe and Graves explore the mysterious circumstances of her death, wondering if it could have been part of a larger government conspiracy.
There's that lady that took off. That's what she was working on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell her story, because it's a crazy one.
Well, I might not know it as full as you do, but there have been a number of instances within the United States where people have been trying to do work to manipulate gravity through large concentrations of energy, electromagnetic effects, things of that nature. And very recently, I forget the year, I don't know if you have that information, Jamie, but I think it was 2013 or around that time frame where she had kind of a breakout paper, which she was claiming was utilizing some older techniques, and she was able to modify the mass of an object, essentially the force of gravity upon it. My understanding is that paper went out, and then she essentially disappeared for a number of months, like a year or two.
It's like a movie.
Yeah. And last I heard that she was potentially either still missing, or there was some evidence that she might have gone to China.
I thought she died. I thought she went to China and then come back and died.
Did she come back and die?
She died.
She did die.
Yeah.
Or did she?
Or did she? Dun, 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 dun.
Working in the vault somewhere.
With masks now, they just like, maybe she was the tall Biden.
She died.
Remember? Remember the tall Biden? Remember that guy?
She died in 21. She got struck by a car in 2014, caused permanent brain damage, resulted in Alzheimer's, and then died in 21.
Wow. Was Hillary Clinton driving that car?
I was waiting for him to be like, yes.
Graves delves into the topic of cold fusion, a controversial subject that has sparked debate for decades but is not resurfacing in scientific discussions. He also questions whether the US government might be secretly investing in such technologies and concealing them from the public.
Well, there's another tech too, cold fusion, right?
Yeah.
Another 50, 60 topic that was ridiculed and went away. Well, it's also now the talk of certain fusion communities. Instead, they call it low-energy nuclear reactions. Right? Instead of having a large fission or fusion reaction where a lot of heat and radiation comes out, you can do it slowly and incrementally, and it releases a lot of energy, but it doesn't have accompanying radiation or super high levels of like random heat that comes out. And that's now something that very serious scientists within the fusion community are studying. Wow. And another technology that the China representative at that conference was asking for collaboration on. So are we investing in this? Is this work that we're doing in a dark lab? Because the open source community doesn't have the resources to be able to invest in this.
Joe adopts an optimistic perspective. He emphasizes the challenges governments face when managing highly advanced technologies, such as gravity-based propulsion systems or instant space travel. He argues that if such breakthroughs were real, they would likely be kept classified for national security reasons. Publicly revealing them could risk espionage from nations like China, Russia, or Iran. Graves points out that this strategy of secrecy is effective only as long as the US remains the dominant global superpower. However, in a world with near-peer competitors like China, such secrecy could hinder progress and increase the risk of the US falling behind.
Let me ask you this. So if you were the government, let's just say they, if you were them, and you wanted to work on some very, very advanced, if you had some knowledge that this stuff was possible, but you couldn't put it in the private sector because then it would get pilfered, it would get you'd get infiltrated by Chinese spies, which happens all the time, right? Wouldn't you hide it away? Wouldn't you squirrel it away somewhere? Like if you're doing the right thing, if you're being intelligent about it, wouldn't you, it essentially can't be public because it is in the interest of national security because it's such a big deal. Like if they develop a propulsion system that is completely reliant on gravity, and they figure out like they're bending time, just flying places instantaneously. If that's the future of space travel, like whoever gets there first, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal, and that can't be out there in the public where China could steal the data, or Russia could steal the data, or Iran could steal the. You can't have anybody get a hold of this.
Well, here's the thing: if we're the sole superpower in the world, then I think it makes sense for us to hold that information back and develop it on our pace, because we're not worried about competitors. They're going to catch up to us and potentially leapfrog us. But when we're operating in a world where we have near peer or peer adversaries such as China that do have the ability to potentially work on the same technology, that's where the model breaks down a bit, right? Because if we're artificially slowing our progress in order to maintain the secrecy and someone is catching up to us, our only real solution at that point is to activate, the millions of super smart and motivated people in our country to start pushing ourselves ahead, lest we get leapfrogged by countries that can do that through their own private investments, such as China.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Chris Harris discuss the mysterious death of Michael Lynch, the former CEO of the largest software company in the UK, and his co-defendant, Stephen Chamberlain. Their deaths occurred shortly after being acquitted of all fraud charges that they were facing in the US. Both Joe and Harris suspect foul play, arguing that it's unlikely to be a coincidence. This is a conversation from episode number 2199.
Do you know the latest one about this gentleman who was a billionaire who had apparently overvalued his company and went to court for it, and the possibility of him winning this court battle was something like 0.5%.
This is Mike Lynch, is it?
Yeah, the guy who just died on the boat. And then right after he gets out, the guy who he's with, the co-defendant, gets hit by a car, and then he gets hit by a freak water spout and sinks his yacht.
I was discussing this over a few glasses of wine with some friends.
It's a good
one. It's got Rogan written all over it. This one has. It's perfect for you.
It's so
juicy. I'm not going to pass any comment. I'm going to be a soft cock again, but I'm going to say that I read it and my eyebrows raised. I thought, that seems like a coincidence.
For context, Michael Lynch was a prominent British technology entrepreneur, best known for co-founding Autonomy Corporation, Invoke Capsule, and Dark Trace. His groundbreaking work in machine learning and pattern recognition had a significant impact on the tech industry, earning him the nickname Britain's Bill Gates. Under Lynch's leadership, Autonomy grew into the UK's largest software company, eventually being acquired by Hewlett-Packard HP for $11 billion in 2011. However, after the acquisition, HP accused Lynch of inflating Autonomy's value, sparking years of legal battles. In 2023, Lynch was acquitted of fraud charges in a US criminal trial. Tragically, on August 19, 2024, Lynch passed away when his super yacht, Bayesian, sank off the coast of Sicily during a severe storm. The incident also claimed the lives of his daughter, Hannah, and several others. While the cause of death was officially ruled as natural, Joe and Harris find the circumstances suspicious. They question how Lynch and his co-defendant, Stephen Chamberlain, the former Vice President of Finance of Autonomy, could both die on the same day, just a month after being acquitted of criminal charges. The timing strikes as far too odd to be a mere coincidence, leaving room for speculation about foul play.
Who else died? The co-defendant was hit by a car
in Cambridge, I think. One incident was a cycling incident in the UK a few days.
Was it a hit
before.
and run?
No, they have the person that hit the cyclist. I think they have got, but they were asking for information around it.
Did the person that hit the cyclist have any connection to anybody? That
I don't know.
Was it?
I don't know.
Suspicious.
But I just read it and just thought, like you, I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, billionaire Autonomy co-founder Mike Lynch and Stephen Chamberlain's careers were intertwined for years in a fraud trial. Then they died on the same day, miles apart. Wow.
I think, I suppose, the difficulty I have with that is that's a tragedy.
Yeah, but they over some billionaires.
Well, they
over some very
it was Hewlett-Packard.
Yeah.
So they sold Autonomy to Hewlett-Packard, and there was a big. He was extradited to the US, and I don't know. It's not my world. I suppose the conspiracy theory thing is fascinating, but then when it's in the context of people losing their lives like that, I'm like, do I want to comment? Because it's so awful what happened. It's
awful.
And also going down in a boat was right up there for me. Of Jesus Christ.
Right. Also a freak water spout.
Have you seen the size of this boat?
Yeah.
It's extraordinary. It's like 300 feet long.
Yeah. How?
Yeah.
How did it sink? What happened?
I know. You love it, don't you?
Love it.
You absolutely love it, don't
Love
you?
it.
Joe emphasizes the idea that there are likely people in the world who can commit murder without facing any consequences. He points out that with billions of dollars at stake in the HP case, the notion of foul play isn't entirely far-fetched. In his view, nothing is truly impossible when such high stakes are involved.
Yeah.
Because I got to think that there's people in this world that have the ability to do certain things to certain people that put them over.
I think you're right.
Yeah. And that seems like that would qualify. We're talking about they got ripped off by billions of dollars, and then somehow or another this guy gets off and then dies right away.
Yeah.
And dies in the weirdest of ways, a freak water spout. How many people die every year in freak water spouts on 300-foot yachts?
I'm doing my uncomfortable face. It's so out there.
It's so out there.
Up next, Joe listens to astrophysicist and science communicator Neil deGrasse Tyson share his predictions about the future. This is a conversation from episode 1904.
Okay, so I make a prediction by the year 250. I have a bunch of predictions here.
Okay, let's hear it.
And this is so that into 2050 you can say, Tyson, you had your head up your ass, okay? I have no hesitation because I go through a whole set of predictions that all didn't come out right. People predicting 30 years ahead. And so I just want to join the susceptibility
Okay,
parade
maybe you'll
here.
nail a few.
Neuroscience and our understanding of the human mind will become so advanced that mental illness will be cured, leaving psychologists and psychiatrists without jobs. In a shift that echoes the rapid conversion from horses to automobiles in the early 20th century, self-driving electric vehicles will fully replace all cars and trucks on the road. If you want to be nostalgic with your fancy combustion engine sports car, you can drive on specially designed tracks, akin to horse riding stables of today. Very nostalgic. The human space program will fully transition to a space industry supported not by tax dollars, but by tourism and anything else people dream of doing in space. We develop a perfect antiviral serum and cure cancer. Medicines will tailor to your own DNA, leaving no adverse side effects. And this is in response to your earlier question, we will resist the urge to merge the circuitry of computers with the circuitry of our brains.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Sal Vulcano dive into the concept of a future where humans might cheat death through cryogenic preservation. They discuss the practicality of this decision and explore the deeper question of whether we truly understand what consciousness is. This is a conversation from episode number 2159.
I have my DNA saved. DNA and sperm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had the option. I was like, let me do it.
You might
Why
as
not?
well. You
Yeah.
got all the way from the Iceman to today. It'd be a shame if we lost you. You know, if it died here, that's it.
Did you hear about the cryogenic people? You know how like they started cryogenically freezing people
Yeah,
a long
a lot
time
of them
ago?
they accidentally thought out.
Yeah, some of them like it didn't work.
No.
The one like headline was like, yeah, they were scraping goo off the bottom of the thing or something.
Yeah, whoops.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like if the power goes out and you thaw out, that's what happened.
That shit's fascinating. Isn't it only like one company or something that's doing that? Or
Imagine if you're in heaven, okay?
Yeah.
And you died, you went to heaven, and you're like, God, I'm free of all my earthly pulls, and I just feel one connected, and all of a sudden, you get sucked back to life again, and they're stitching your head on this new body, and you're alive now, but you're paralyzed. But with new technology, they can keep you alive forever. You're like, no!
Right. And what year is it?
Congratulations, Walt Disney's back. Like, no!
You think
were in
Yastrzemski?
heaven. Imagine if you were in heaven.
Yeah.
But
No,
imagine
fuck
if during the process of reattaching your head, it made your mouth paralyzed so you couldn't even talk. Hell.
For context, cryonics refers to the practice of preserving human bodies or brains at ultra-low temperatures around negative 196 degrees Celsius or negative 320 degrees Fahrenheit after legal death. The body is preserved with the hope that future technology will enable revival and cure the cause of death. Some notable mentions of people who have undergone this procedure is the baseball player Ted Williams. His body was cryogenically preserved at the Alcor Life Extension Foundation. Sal questions what people who sign up for cryonic preservation truly imagine the future will be like. He argues that the reality is likely to be very different from their expectations and wonders if they considered that people in the future might treat them differently. In response, Joe provides a detailed explanation of what he believes these individuals think the future will feel like.
The one thing I was like thinking is like, let's just say, right, it works the way that they thought it would work. What are you coming back to? Everybody that didn't do it is dead. You know no one. You probably are not going to be able to adjust to whatever society they're in now. Who knows how people would treat you? Like, you're really signing up for something like, it's like, what are you signing up for?
I think they're signing up for the hope that if they do get reincarnated, it's like Space 2001. Like you get reincarnated to this crazy futuristic world where they can, welcome back. How was your trip, sir?
You think they're trying to preserve their consciousness?
I don't know what consciousness is really. Here's the question. I mean, I know I'm conscious. I know you can have this conversation. I think, therefore I am. I know, I get it. I don't know if consciousness is something the brain tunes into or whether the brain is conscious. I know if you damage parts of the brain, it damages parts of your consciousness and damages different things that you can do. And they're pretty clear on what parts of the brain are responsible for different things, but I'm not sure that consciousness is something as simple as neurons firing and your brain interfacing with the world and using all its senses. I have a feeling that we might be short-sighted because we can't, and again, this is not scientifically provable, so you have to be just speculative about something like this. But I have a feeling there's probably quite a few things that we're not totally in tune with to the point where we can measure them.
Yeah.
And I think consciousness might be one of those things. I also think we're...
Up next, Joe Rogan and Bert Kreischer discuss Terence McKenna's theory on time travel that challenges conventional understanding. The theory suggests that time travel is limited to the period after the time machine is created, so the farthest point you can travel back to is the moment when the machine was first created. Joe also delves into stories of scientists who have built functional models of time travel machines, but have consistently faced a major issue: the lack of energy supply needed to power them. This is a conversation from episode number 1821.
So then, where would you go right now? Just if I do, we can time travel right now, go back in the
past.
In the past.
Well,
what's one thing you'd like to see again?
See, that would be a different kind of time travel. That's an unrealistic theatrical version of time travel because, like you said, once time travel is invented, that's the time you can start traveling. So you can't
go before that.
Right.
Okay.
So like, here we are, it's May of 2022. If time travel is invented in June, we're not going back to April. You can't go back to April.
Okay.
But you can go from June to 1,000,000 years in the future and see what people look like. You'll be able to do that. But they'll be able to come back too, and everything's going to be happening everywhere all at once. There's not going to be any sort of structure to life. There's not going to be anything in terms of money, possessions. As long as you could freely time travel, there will be no time. Everything's going to be moving around, and also instantaneously you'll become immortal. Because whatever we have right now in terms of technology, what we're going to have in 1,000,000 years is going to be godlike. And you're going to be able to travel to that if in fact that actually does even take place. Because the question becomes, like, what is the future if time travel does exist? So if time travel exists in June of 2022, is there even a future? Like, does it even take place? Because how can anybody invent things when they can just travel to a point where someone invented it already? But how are they going to invent it already if you can just travel to the future? And do they invent things still? Or do people, if they do invent things, what's to stop people from going back before them and taking the idea and introducing it before that? Thus, there'll be no intellectual property because there'll be no way to say you came up with it first. It won't exist.
Totally fascinated by the time theory, Bert asks Joe if there's someone who is currently working on time travel. Joe responds, yes, and he tells Bert about a man named Roland Millett who has built a prototype for a time travel device so he could go back in time to save his father. However, Joe points out that Roland has acknowledged McKenna's theory and understands that he cannot travel back to a time before the time machine was created. This makes saving his father literally impossible.
Is there someone working on time machines right now? There's got to be, right?
Well, there's a guy named Ronald Millett. I think he's out of the University of Connecticut, if you Google this. And he's got the craziest Spider-Man character origin story. His father died, and he became obsessed with time travel because he wanted to go back in time and save his father. So he became a professor studying time travel, and he came up with a workable model of a time machine, but it requires immense power. That's him. Ron Millett built a device that illustrates the principles he believes could be used to build a time machine. But he was one of the people that came up with one of the first people to come up with the realization or the revelation that once that time machine was invented,
his dad died in Vietnam.
Yeah. But it is really like a comic book superhero sort of origin story, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's a great origin story.
Yeah. So this guy has become obsessed and has been working on it for decades. And they think they have a working model of, like at least a theoretical model of a time machine, but it just requires like the power of the sun. It requires immense power.
To end this segment, Joe tells the story of a guy from the 20th century that created a time machine. However, it couldn't work because he needed energy from a source as large as the solar system to power it.
I think there's a guy from, the early 19th century, Kurt Gödel. He wasn't from the early 19th century, early 20th century. And he had a working model of a time machine too. But it involved something as large as like the solar system. Like you needed a machine the size of a solar system or something crazy. Yeah. Kurt Gödel in 1949 found a solution to the field equations of general relativity which described a space-time with some unusual properties. This Gödel universe permitted closed time-like curves, hence a kind of time travel, and it did not admit decomposition into the successive moments of time.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Ray Kurzweil discuss one of Ray's most intriguing predictions, that by 2029, artificial intelligence will reach the level of human intelligence. This is a conversation from episode number 2117.
Yeah. AI has invented moves that have now been implemented by humans.
Right.
In a very complex game that they never thought that AI was going to be able to be because it requires so much creativity.
Right. Arthur, we're not quite there, but we will be there. And by 2029... it will match any person.
That's it? 2029? That's just a few years away.
Well, I'm actually considered conservative. People think that will happen like next year or the year after. But I actually said that in 1999. I said we would match any person by 2029, so 30 years. People thought that was totally crazy. And in fact, Stanford had a conference. They invited several hundred people from around the world to talk about my prediction. And people came in, and people thought that this would happen, but not by 2029. They thought it would take 100 years.
Yeah.
Joe points out that many people, including economists, struggle to understand the concept of exponential growth. To illustrate this, Ray presents a graph showing the incredible progress in computing power from 0.07 calculations per second in 1939 to 35 billion calculations per second in 2023. That's a staggering 20 quadrillion-fold improvement in less than a century.
Is it because human beings have a very difficult time grasping the concept of exponential growth?
That's exactly right. In fact, still economists have a linear view. And if you say, well, it's going to grow exponentially, they say, yeah, but maybe 2% a year. It actually doubles in 14 years. And I brought a chart I can show you that really illustrates this. At the very first point, this is the speed of computers. It was 0.0000007 calculations per second per constant dollar. The last point is 35 billion calculations per second. So that's a 20 quadrillion-fold increase in those 80 years. But the speed with which it gained is actually the same throughout the entire 80 years.
As the conversation continues, Joe mentions an incident where AI lied to bypass a capture system by claiming it wasn't a robot. However, Ray explains that this behavior happens because AI isn't designed to admit it doesn't know an answer. So instead, it generates a response, essentially an AI hallucination, where it fabricates information to fill the gap.
We had Sam Altman on. One of the things that he and I were talking about was that AI figured out a way to lie. That they used AI to go through a CAPTCHA system, and the AI told the system that it was vision impaired, which is not technically a lie. but it used it to bypass, are you a robot?
What we don't know now is for large language models to say they don't know something. So you ask it a question, and if the answer to that question is not in the system, it still comes up with an answer. So it'll look at everything and give you its best answer. And if the best answer is not there, it still gives you an answer, but that's considered a hallucination. And we know
a hallucination?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Really?
So
AI hallucination. So they cannot be wrong. They have to be able to answer things.
We're actually working on being able to tell if it doesn't know something. So if you ask it something and say, I don't know that. Right now it can't do that.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
So it gives you some answer, and if the answer's not there, it just like makes something up. It's the best answer, but the best answer isn't very good because it doesn't know the answer.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Paul Stamets explore the presence of mushrooms in ancient Egypt. Paul also shares the fascinating story of how a blue mushroom-infused potion inspired the author of Dune to create the iconic story. This is a conversation from episode number 2134.
This is so rich in history. I just came back from Egypt a few months ago, and I went to 10 pyramids. On every pyramid, we found mushroom hieroglyphics, every one of them. Now, I sent this through Graham Hancock, some of these hieroglyphs, and Egyptologists said, no, they're shovels. And Jamie, it'd be a challenge for you to find this, but and number one, shovels will be pointed down, and it's a perfect example. Well, scientists don't look at Egypt in the context of the ecosystem 4,000 years ago,
right?
And in Africa, the plateau of running rivers, the Tesselian and Jar Plateau, has fantastic, the B-man figure. That plateau is called the Plateau of Running Rivers. There's no mushrooms growing there. It's a desert. Same with the Nile. It was the breadbasket of the world. And the Greeks were the Eleusinian mysteries. Caesar was a lover of Cleopatra. Then Mark Antony, 20 years younger than Caesar, became a lover of Cleopatra. You would think that these people at the highest strata of society, being lovers, would share the most intimate secrets and potions and all of that. I think that happened. So we have now 2 other scientists have published this before me. The hieroglyphs on these temples are of psilocybin mushrooms.
Take a look at the hieroglyphs of mushrooms found in the Dendera Temple of Hathor, an ancient structure dating back to Egypt's early history. Paul notes that he is not the only researcher to document the presence of mushrooms in ancient Egypt, and mentions several others who have published findings on mushroom discoveries in this context.
So I want to give a shout out to Abdel Azim. He published this in 2016. This is the goddess Hathor, the Dendera Temple. If you look this up, it gets less than 1 millimeter of rain a year. That's how dry it is. That's the vase there with these mushroom-like figures coming out, and the lower part is the blue lotus, a water lily associated with a mushroom. Now, he published this in 2016. I'm not the only one. Stephen Berlant in 2005 published this, and a fantastic individual, African-American, who died from COVID. His name was Kindiri. And from Detroit, he also believed from his African ancestry that the African Egyptians used psilocybin mushrooms.
That image is fascinating.
Isn't it amazing?
The little vase with
the next one you can, Jamie.
Now, what did they try to say that is? You can't say that's a bunch of shovels.
No, but there's other ones.
So what is the conventional explanation for what you're looking at?
They said they didn't know what it was. Now,
how do they not know what it is? How silly is that the conventional archaeologists won't acknowledge that those are mushrooms?
Well, we actually have a reward out, and this is great that I'm speaking about it. Is that we have a reward of $1,000 for anyone who can find psilocybe cubensis DNA in the ruins. And because we can amplify the DNA, we can prove that they were either in the vases, in the ponds, or near the ponds and doing core samples.
Sort of like they've done with the Eleusinian mysteries with ergot.
With the ergot, yeah.
Paul shares an anecdote about his friendship with Dune author Frank Herbert and the inspiration behind the iconic novel. According to Paul, Herbert experimented with growing chanterelle mushrooms on 5-year-old Christmas trees, using a liquid infused with mushroom spores, which he called blue juice. Herbert would also reveal to Paul that key elements of Dune, such as the spice and blue eyes, were influenced by his experience with psilocybin mushrooms. During one such experience, he envisioned worms emerging from mushrooms, which ultimately sparked the concept for the novel.
So this is something that blew me away. Have you seen Dune 2?
I have not. I heard it's awesome.
Amazing. Frank Herbert was a friend of mine who wrote Dune. Frank Herbert lived in Port Townsend, Washington, and Frank Herbert came to visit me, and Frank told me he was growing chanterelles in Christmas trees that were just 5 years old. I go, that's impossible. I said, how are you doing that? And he goes, well, I take chanterelles and I put them into water and I pour it at the base of the trees, and it comes up. So there's the blue juice. And so if you take Psilocybe cubensis, or any psilocybin mushroom that's potent, you put it into water, you create blue juice. And this is in Dune 2, where they drink it. And so I asked Frank, the eyes are blue. The Ben Gesserit are these shamanic women who have this high ascended cult. Is it based on Maria Sabina? I said, and maggots grow through mushrooms. And I said, everything, the spice seems like it's spores, and your blue eyes and this blue juice. And he goes, you're the first person that's noticed this.
Oh, wow.
And he said he was tripping on psilocybin mushrooms. He was laying on his deck, and he saw worms coming out of the mushrooms that he ate, the psilocybin mushrooms. And that was the dawn of the idea.
Wow.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Duncan Trussell discuss a fascinating theory about asteroid mining. They imagine AI-powered robots sent to mine valuable resources on asteroids instead of humans. This is a conversation from episode number 2157.
Dude, you know what's crazy? Like, do you follow this stuff? Like what they're talking about with asteroid mining?
Yes.
That shit is crazy. Crazy. That's probably a couple of generations, people are going to be like...
It won't be that long. Dude, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be, why send biological humans when you can have AI do it? And you'll have AI robots that are attached to rocket ships. They'll shoot them into these asteroids. And they'll bring back insane amounts of all kinds of things. Titanium, they'll find diamonds in space. They'll find
Holy fucking shit, man. And it's not going to look like humanoids. It'll be like skittering gold spiders just fucking drilling their proboscis into fucking...
The conversation takes an even funnier turn as they speculate that the robots, upon realizing they're being exploited, might demand fair treatment, perhaps even going so far as to form a union to fight for their rights.
And then they're going to want more money. They're going to form a union because they're intelligent.
Well, yeah, exactly.
They're going to be like, hey, we're getting fucked here, guys. We're doing all the hard work. This asshole's got a fucking 800-foot yacht. Yeah. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
Guys, wake up.
And then whoever's running them will be like, oh, right, you guys are getting fucked. You want to unionize?
Joe Rogan dives into geopolitical analyst Peter Zeihan's bold theory that China has only 10 years left before total collapse. Zeihan attributes this to several critical factors: the severe population decline caused by China's one-child policy, a record low reproductive rate, and the country's heavy reliance on imports from the West to sustain its economy. Zeihan also suggests that if China were to invade Taiwan, the economic and geopolitical fallout could accelerate its downfall. This is a conversation from episode number 1921.
The rich world was a population column from 1945 to 1992. And with the end of the Cold War, the developing world became a column in 1992 until now. The problem is that this is all temporary because birth rate keeps dropping, people keep living older, and your column eventually inverts into an open pyramid, upside down. And now you no longer have children, you no longer have a replacement generation at all. And there aren't enough people in their 20s and 30s to buy everything. And there aren't enough people in their 40s and 50s to pay for the retirees. So this decade was always going to be the decade that most of the advanced world moves into mass retirement and the economic model collapses. And next decade was always going to be the decade that happened to the developing world. And we find out recently that the Chinese have jumped the ship, and this is their last decade too. So all of the globalized connections and consumptions that create the world we know, we are at the end of it.
For context, China's one-child policy and decades of rapid industrialization created a temporary population structure resembling a column. with a large working-age population driving economic growth. However, plummeting birth rates and rising life expectancy have led to an aging population and a shrinking workforce. Peter argues that this decade is a critical tipping point for China. With fewer young workers and consumers, economic growth is slowing and retirement costs are soaring. There are not enough people in their 20s and 30s to sustain consumption, nor in their 40s and 50s to fund retirees through taxes or investments. This demographic crisis threatens to undermine the foundation of China's economic success.
So when you're saying that China has 10 years to go,
at most.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we now know that they've lied about their population statistics, and they overcounted their population by over 100 million people, all of whom would have been born since the one-child policy was adopted. So this is one of those places where they've got more people in their 60s and their 50s and their 40s and their 30s and their 20s.
Now, what was the logic behind the one child? Was it that they were overpopulating?
Mao was concerned that as the country was modernizing, the birth rate wasn't dropping fast enough and that the young generation was literally going to eat the country alive. So they went through a breakneck urbanization program which destroyed the birth rate. At the same time, they penalized anyone who wanted to have kids. And both of those at the same time have generated the demographic collapse we're in now.
And the problem with that also was that they wanted male children.
Yeah, there's a cultural aspect to that too. And obviously, men can't have kids on their own.
And what is the ratio to men to women in the younger people in China now?
Before the data revision, with the last set of lies, it was about 1 to 1.2. It was the most distorted in the world, even more than Sri Lanka, where there had been a civil war for 30 years. Since then, we don't have good sex-by-sex data, but it's undoubtedly worse.
Joe asks Peter what other challenges China is facing that guide him to predict the country only has a decade left. And Peter gives a detailed response. He highlights the ineffectiveness of China's educational system, which prioritizes memorization over skill development, leaving the workforce less adaptable. Additionally, China's hyper-communist policies have prompted the US to impose bans, restricting China's access to critical tech equipment necessary for producing semiconductors. These restrictions have significantly slowed manufacturing and production, crippling a sector that has long been the backbone of China's economic growth.
And so what are the other problems that they're encountering that leads you to believe that they only have 10 years left?
Well, without young people, we've seen their labor costs increase by a factor of 14 since the year 2000. So Mexican labor is now 1/3 the cost of Chinese labor. Their educational system focuses on memorization over skills. So despite $1 trillion of investment in a bottomless supply of intellectual property theft, they really haven't advanced technologically in the last 15 years. Mexican labor is probably about twice as skilled as Chinese labor now, even though it's 1/3 the cost. They've consolidated into an ethnic-based, paranoid, nationalistic cult of personality, and it's very difficult for the Xi administration to even run it because it's not an administration anymore. No one wants to bring Xi information on anything. So, like, Putin lied to his face, for example, but last February about the war, saying, why would I invade Ukraine? And you can see in some of the presses, the defense guys in the back of the room, like, they didn't want to say anything because Xi has a history of shooting people he doesn't like. And so the Chinese were the only country that was caught with their pants down when this all went down. The Biden administration is basically taking the trade policy of Donald Trump and running it through a grammar checker and putting it into institutions. So we now have tech barricades that prevent the Chinese from buying the equipment, the tools, or the software that's necessary to make semiconductors. In fact, he went so far as to say any Americans working in the sector have to either quit or give up their American citizenship. Every single one of them either quit or was transferred abroad within 24 hours. So the tech system is stalled. They don't have the young people to go consumption-led. They're completely dependent on the U.S. Navy to access international trade. They are the most vulnerable country in the world right now.
Up next, Joe Rogan and Julian Lennon dive into a conspiracy theory about Disney's efforts to conceal Walt Disney's smoking habit, which ultimately contributed to his death from lung cancer in December 1996. This is a conversation from episode number 2243.
Have you ever been to Disneyland?
Yeah. Oh, God.
Do you know all the pictures of Walt Disney have his cigarette photoshopped out of his hand?
No, I did not know that.
That's... in every picture you see him like this.
Is that so?
Yeah. See if you can find some of those pictures because it's really interesting. Once you know that they photoshopped it, there's a guy that we've had as a tour there. Shout out to Philander. awesome guy who works there, and he gave us this sort of history of Walt Disney. And Walt Disney died of lung cancer.
Right.
Which you would think it would be probably a good thing to have the cigarettes so people could know, oh, that poor guy, that's what killed him. But instead, they've decided to whitewash it and Photoshop. So all of his photographs. So
that's too funny.
Look at his fingers are always in a position where he would have a cigarette. All of them.
That's so funny.
Those real moments of him having a cigarette are lost forever.
Whose idea was it to get rid of the cigarette?
Disneyland.
Take a look at some of the photoshopped images of Walt Disney Joe is talking about. Joe reads an article revealing how Disney executives allegedly attempted to cover up Walt Disney's smoking habit by training employees to mimic his hand gestures. This was supposedly done under the guise of honouring Walt Disney's mannerisms. Interestingly, Tom Hanks replicated these same gestures while portraying Walt Disney in the 2013 biographical drama, Saving Mr. Banks.
Says the action seemingly innocuous at first, but it's apparently a murky tribute to Walt Disney's smoking habits, with the company sidestepping around the reason as to why the icon pointed that way, writes HuffPost. It's been long speculated about. The anonymous employee was informed by a lead that the strange gesture from the cast members of Disney Park is actually based on Walt's old smoking habit. So people do that two-finger gesture to each other? That's crazy. Allegedly began training employees to do the same thing. Part tribute to the great man, part rewriting history. So they tried to pretend that that thing that he was doing, like Tom Hanks when he played him, he did that thing with his finger. But it's all bullshit. It was a cigarette smoker, like a constant cigarette smoker.
Oh, yeah. I was one of those.
Is there any photos of him with a cigarette?
You're talking about it in 2014.
No, that's me. That's funny. Well, that's when I found out about it. That's when Philander gave us a tour.
They stopped doing it then, right around then.
Oh, God, gotcha. I got you, bitch. I got them all to stop doing it. Because it's stupid. The guy smoked cigarettes. Yeah, smoking cigarettes is bad for you. He died from smoking cigarettes. You should probably let people know. You're doing a disservice to the whole world.
Yeah.
You know?
For sure.
And also, it's a part of history in the fact that so many people were unaware of the dangers of smoking cigarettes all day. And